Before we begin, let's slow everything down. You're not here to learn dates, or memorize rules, or keep track of every name. This channel exists for quiet watching, for long stories told gently from a distance where nothing is urgent. We walk through strange worlds and broken timelines, the way Prismo watches them from the center of time, calmly, patiently, letting moments unfold without rushing them. If you're still awake and you want more journeys like this waiting for you later, you can quietly subscribe or leave a like. A small signal to keep these timelines playing. And if you're already drifting, that's perfect. Let's begin. The skeleton speaks and the universe holds its breath. No alarms, no screaming, just a tall, rotting silhouette in a cozy cosmic living room, looking at a pink, two-dimensional wishmaster and saying, with the calm of an empty grave, "I wish for the extinction of all life." 5 words. That is all it takes to make every timeline shiver. Out beyond Prismo's time room, space is still. The stars don't flicker harder. Galaxies don't suddenly collide. Instead, the multiverse reacts the way a sleeping animal does when someone whispers its name. A tiny twitch, a subtle tightening, a quiet awareness that something has changed in the dark. Timelines branch and bend, not with explosions, but with the soft, glassy sound of possibility cracking under pressure. Here is the thing about this room at the center of time. It looks like an 80s basement that fell through reality and decided to stay. There is the couch, the movies, the jar of cosmic pickles. There is Prismo, stretched out on his back like a lazy shadow on the wall. And there is the Lich, perfectly still, as if even decay has paused to see how this wish will land. Time itself feels present here, not as ticking seconds, but as a quiet listener. Entropy leans in from the edges, patient and polite, as if saying, "Yes, this is my kind of desire." Possibility sits cross-legged on the floor, eyes wide, waiting to see which way the universe will tilt. They do not speak. They do not vote. They just watch Prismo, because in this tiny room, his interpretation is the only bridge between a sentence and a new reality. Prismo doesn't flinch. He never does. He repeats the words in his mind with the tired precision of someone who has heard too many wishes and seen too many consequences. We're going to take this literally, he thinks, because that is what the rules demand. 1 wish per customer. No moral veto. No rewrites. Just cosmic bureaucracy wrapped in a chill hangout vibe. Think about that for a second. A bored wishmaster, a skeleton with the end of existence on his tongue, and an invisible audience of fundamental forces, all sharing this one quiet moment. No one here is surprised. Not really. The Lich is only saying out loud what annihilation has always wanted. And yet, in that specifically Adventure Time way, this isn't just an ending. It is a hinge. This single wish ripples backward and forward through the entire history of Ooh. It touches the Mushroom War's distant flashes on the horizon, the slow unraveling of Simon into Ice King, the rise of Candy Kingdoms and vampires and wizards, Finn and Jake's whole lifetime of almost heroic, almost goofy choices, all of it vibrating softly around this point. So, let's start from here, lying back in the time room with Prismo, as if the universe is a television left on low volume. In this video, we're going to drift away from the Lich's words and follow their echoes instead, all the way to the very beginning and long after this wish is granted. Think of every era of Adventure Time as a scene in one long calm dream, playing across infinite screens while you fall asleep between universes. What we're about to dream through together. So here is the thing. If we're going to fall asleep inside this universe, we should know what kind of dream we're walking into. In this video, we're going to move straight through Adventure Time's lore in order, not hopping around the multiverse like a montage. but gliding from one quiet era to the next. As if you and Prismo are just flipping channels at the center of time, with the volume turned almost all the way down. Let's start before there even is a mushroom war to worry about. Before Oo, before Finn, before Jake. We're going to drift back to the primordial elementals, to fire and ice, and candy and slime, when reality is still learning what shape it wants to hold. It's a world of raw desire and cosmic power, ancient magic humming under the surface, and we'll watch it all like distant weather, the calm before any storm knows it is a storm. From there, we'll move into the age that looks the most like our own, the calm before the end, when humans build cities and satellites, and quietly, the weapons that will end almost everything. The Mushroom War will be there, but only as distant thunder on the horizon, flashes of light, a single mushroom cloud reflected in Prismo's screens. The moment the universe blinks, and Earth becomes the strange, enchanted ruin that will eventually be called Oo. Think about that for a second. The apocalypse as just one more late-night channel. After the blast, we'll follow Simon and Marceline through the ashes. Not in frantic detail, in soft focus, a kind man with a cursed crown, a little girl with a toy, wandering through broken malls and empty parking lots as time stretches out. We'll feel the ache of his mind unraveling, the heartbreak of memory slipping away, and the quiet, stubborn comfort of the two of them holding on to each other as long as existence lets them. Then, slowly, the world fills back in. Candy biomass grows into princess bubblegum. Vampires crawl out of history. Wizards experiment with reality like it's a science fair project gone wrong. The rise of Oo will unfold as a gentle montage. The Candy Kingdom lighting up the night. The nightosphere leaking in at the edges. Strange creatures deciding that this ruined Earth is home now. It is chaos, but will only touch the calm parts. The moments of routine in a universe that should not have survived. And finally, we'll settle into Finn and Jake's lifetime, like lying back on Prismo's couch for the long part of the story. Their origins, their adventures, their quiet endings, and the way their friendship nudges Oo toward balance and peace. Along the way, we'll keep brushing against loneliness, immortality, heartbreak, and those tiny connections that somehow outlive wars, crowns, and even time itself. By the time we reach the end, and a little bit beyond, you might already be asleep, somewhere between timelines, while Prismo keeps the channels changing for us. A map of time. How this bedtime story will unfold. So let's start by actually laying out the path we're going to walk, before we take a single step. You're going to be lying there, eyes half closed, and we'll be moving forward through time in a straight, gentle line, even while the universe itself bends and folds in that specifically Adventure Time way. First, we go back before Oo even has a name. Back to the ancient elemental age, when fire, ice, candy, and slime are not just aesthetics, but the deep grammar of reality, quietly arguing with each other through volcanoes, glaciers, sugar forests, and glittering swamps. We'll drift through that era like a slow camera pan, watching the balance tilt, watching the world slide toward a catastrophe it doesn't yet understand. No explosions in your ears, just distant flashes on the horizon, like heat lightning you can fall asleep to. From there, we'll arrive in the pre-war human world, a familiar Earth, almost boring in its normalcy, except you know what's coming. Here is the thing. We're going to treat the Mushroom War not as an action sequence, but as a memory, a soft echo. You'll hear it as muffled thunder, feel it as a pressure in the air. While the timeline fractures and the future Candy Kingdom, nightosphere portals, and the Lich's first real opportunity are all seeded in the same terrible wish for power. Think about that for a second. One war and an entire multiverse of consequences. After the blasts fade, we enter the long frozen aftermath. This is Simon and Betty's corridor. We'll follow Simon Petrikov wandering through ruined cities, the crown slowly sanding down his mind, each century stealing another piece of his identity, until Ice King is all that's left. We'll move through Marceline's childhood here too, a little girl with a battered teddy bear in a world of ash and broken glass, being protected by a man who keeps forgetting why he loves her. It sounds harsh. We will tell it softly. Then the ice melts. Magic blooms. The rise of Ooh begins. We watch Princess Bubblegum literally grow herself from candy biomass into a ruler and scientist, the Candy Kingdom puffing up around her like a pastel experiment gone right. We'll pass through the vampire war in whispers, follow Marceline's long lonely hunt, and keep tugging on the Lich's thread as it reappears in dungeons, wells, and alternate timelines that really should let you sleep, but don't. Through all of this, we'll keep floating back to Prismo's time room, that cozy center of time, like coming up for air between dreams. In this video, those check-ins are our chapter breaks. We'll glance at wishes made and unmade, at the rules that quietly bind the multiverse, and then dive back down. Finally, we arrive at the age of heroes, Finn and Jake's lifetime. Their treehouse, their first quests, the way they nudge Ooh toward balance without ever really meaning to. We'll walk with them to the end, and then beyond, into the final, quiet futures where grass grows over old battlefields and existence relaxes its shoulders a little. Along the way, we're going to gently unpack big ideas, identity dissolving and reforming, memory as both curse and comfort, love after apocalypse, desire after loss, power that doesn't fix what hurts, not as lectures, as bedtime stories. And just when you think you know exactly how the map goes, when the path feels safe and familiar, we're going to reach a moment where time itself cheats a little, and the whole timeline takes a breath it was never supposed to take. Get cozy in the time room, and maybe tap the like button, so when the timeline takes that impossible breath, when reality itself hesitates for just a frame, that's our cue to do something very unepic. Get comfortable. Not metaphorically, actually, physically. Wherever you are, let's start by turning your space into a tiny echo of the time room. If you can, dim the lights or turn them off completely, so the darkness feels soft instead of empty. Let your shoulders drop, unclench your jaw, lie back, or sink into whatever passes for a couch in your personal universe, and imagine that very gentle, very weird neon glow Prismo lives in. Not harsh sci-fi fluorescence, more like the warm hum of an old arcade machine that fell asleep and dreamed it was a star. Here is the thing. The time room is technically at the center of time, a cosmic nerve center for the entire multiverse. But it also looks like the laziest bachelor pad in existence. There's an old TV that probably shouldn't still work, but does. There are snacks scattered around in that organized chaos way, where only Prismo knows which pile has the good chips. Windows of reality float everywhere, like screensavers for whole timelines. And in the middle of it, there's this couch that feels too big until you realize it's meant for three. You, Prismo, and Jake, all half napping through the end of the universe. Think about that for a second. You are lying in a room where every possible disaster is visible on some screen, and yet the dominant vibe is chill. That is the energy we're going to borrow. Safe observer, zero responsibility, maximum blankets. If you like having that role, if you like falling asleep to long, lore-heavy walks through reality where you don't have to do anything, this is the moment where you can, very lazily, tap the like button, or subscribe, or do whatever small ritual tells the algorithm, yes, more of this, please. You can do it now, and then immediately forget you ever did it as you drift off. No pressure, no side quest. Just a quiet wish you make to the platform. Keep this kind of story showing up. And there's no obligation to stay awake and monitor the whole timeline. You don't have to catch every reference or track every branch of the multiverse like some overworked cosmic accountant. This story is built to keep going without you. If you fall asleep in the Age of Elementals and wake up in Finn and Jake's retirement, that's fine. If you miss the Mushroom War entirely because you checked out somewhere around ancient magic, that's also fine. Pattern interrupt. What if the best way to understand Adventure Time's reality is to sleep through parts of it? To let your brain file it under dream instead of homework? So, now that you're settled into the couch at the center of time, neon humming, screens drifting, snacks within reach, we're going to rewind. All the way back. Before Ooh. Before the war. Before Simon's crown. Before Princess Bubblegum's first candy cell. Before the Lich's shadow ever touched the earth. Back to a quiet planet on the edge of an ordinary timeline, right before everything changes. Prismo. The soft heart of a chaotic multiverse. So you're on that couch at the center of time, and here is the thing. Even as we rewind the universe, Prismo doesn't move. Time bends. Histories unspool. Whole civilizations rise and fall like slow breathing, and he just lies there on his side, watching, waiting for someone to talk to. Let's start with that contrast, because it's the quiet engine under everything. Prismo can rewrite reality with a sentence. He can split a timeline, patch a universe, nudge existence like you'd nudge a pillow into a more comfortable shape. Infinite power, casually deployed from a beanbag. But he is also bored. He is lonely. He is dependent on whoever happens to stumble into his cozy cosmic prison for conversation, for jokes, for any reminder that he is not just a function running at the edge of the multiverse. Prismo lives between dream and dreamer. Literally. He is the dream of an old man, and yet he's the one who feels more awake, more self-aware than most of the universe he watches. Think about that for a second. Between wish and consequence, he hangs there, a pink outline with a friendly voice, trying to make sure that when someone says, "I wish," they understand that reality is going to take them very, very seriously. Between cosmic order and personal kindness, he is the soft middle, the part that apologizes while the rules snap shut around you. And in this video, even though we're going to walk through Ooh's history in order, the Mushroom War, Simon and Betty, Bubblegum's rise, Finn and Jake's whole heroic mess, we'll keep drifting back to this room, back to Prismo as our emotional lens. Chronology is the map, but Prismo is the narrator on the audio tour, quietly coloring every era with his particular blend of chill and heartbreak. Watch how he deals with Finn and Jake. With them, he's a hangout buddy, a sleepover host at the center of time, putting on movies and letting them crash on the couch. But even in those relaxed moments, the tension is there. He could change everything for them. He could fix their losses, rewrite their regrets, erase their enemies. The question is, can you change everything without losing yourself or the people you care about? With the Lich, that same question turns sharp. One wish for the extinction of all life. And Prismo doesn't argue. He can't. He just follows the rules and then quietly, cleverly, bends the timeline sideways to protect what he can. That is why understanding Prismo's situation, his rules, his limitations, his secret heartbreak, matters for every age of Adventure Time we're about to visit. When we whisper about the Mushroom War, you'll feel him watching the first great fracture in reality. When Simon slips into Ice King, Prismo's unseen wish ledger suddenly feels very heavy. When Ooh blooms out of the ruins, his screens fill with color, and you can almost hear him sigh with relief. He is not in every scene. He is not in most episodes. But he is always there in the background logic of the universe. The quiet reminder that desire has rules, that power has a cost, and that somewhere, someone is staying up all night at the center of time, keeping the multiverse running while everyone else dreams. And as we move into the first age of that world, the calm before the war, you can imagine Prismo queuing up the oldest recording, dimming the lights, and saying, "Okay, watch this one with me." Inside the time room, where every timeline is a nightlight, so when Prismo hits play on that oldest recording, you have to remember where he's watching from. Not from Ooh, not from any one universe at all. He's watching from a little glowing apartment that floats outside the entire multiverse like a quiet living room someone forgot to unplug at the edge of existence. Let's start in the time room itself. It's technically at the center of time, but it doesn't look like a throne room or a cathedral. It looks like the den of your chillest friend who accidentally became a cosmic constant. Old TV humming, game console left on pause, beanbag chairs with the exact shape of someone who has been sitting there for centuries. The air has that low electronic buzz, the kind that makes you feel like it's always midnight, even when there is no such thing as midnight where you are. Every wall is screens, not just a few monitors, but a mosaic of reality, each one a different timeline, doing its own little dance. Farm World flickers next to Ooh, a universe where the Mushroom War never happens, glows quietly beside one where the Lich wins. Think about that for a second. To Prismo, every catastrophe is just another channel, every miracle just another late-night rerun. Here is the thing. For all that power, the rules in this room are painfully precise. One wish per person per lifetime. You have to say it out loud. You can't wish for more wishes. You can't hand your wish off like a coupon, and Prismo doesn't get a moral veto. If the wish is clear, it goes through. Reality bends. Timelines fork. The multiverse updates its save file. He interprets your desire, literally, not cruelly. Not generously, just exactly. If you ask to never see someone again, the universe will find the most direct, clean, sometimes devastating way to enforce that. If you ask for the extinction of all life, well, we're going to spend a whole section on how that plays out. He is not evil. He is not even indifferent. He is just bound by rules older than time itself. So it's important to say what he is not. He is not a trickster genie trying to catch you in a loophole. He is not the monkey's paw waiting to punish your hubris. He's closer to a cosmic clerk at the center of time, processing reality-scale paperwork with a jar of pickles on the desk and a stack of VHS tapes as his only real hobby. He wants to help you. He also wants to keep his job. In this video, we're going to see these rules echo through Simon's quiet, probably selfless wish, through the Lich's apocalyptic demand, through Finn's desperate attempts to fix what can't be unbroken. But not yet. For now, imagine the time room dimming, the screen slowly rewinding past wars and crowns and candy kingdoms, back to a softer, stranger Earth. The first images come into focus. Oceans where Ooh will be, cities that don't know they're doomed, elementals sleeping in human skin. Prismo leans back, the universe reflected in his sunglasses, and cues up the moment before everything goes wrong. And right as the Mushroom War's first distant light flares on his wall of timelines, we're going to step through the screen and leave him behind. For now. The old man who dreams a god when we step through that glowing wall of timelines. We don't land in a battlefield or a throne room. We land in a small, quiet room that technically isn't in any universe at all. A room that exists at the center of time. Dim light. A humming couch. And in the corner, not framed by neon or cosmic screens, just lying there on a simple bed, an old man. Let's start with a twist. Clean and gentle. Prismo is not just dreamy. He is not a metaphor for dreams. He is literally a dream. This laid-back, two-dimensional wishmaster lounging on his couch, watching the multiverse like late-night TV reruns, is the sleeping thought of that frail old man on the bed. Same person. Different layer of reality. The body is ordinary. That's the unsettling part. No glowing aura, no crown of power, just a peaceful face, a thin chest rising and falling, hands folded like he fell asleep, waiting for something that never arrived. The bed is plain, almost hospital-like, while a few feet away, his dream self is making sandwiches with cosmic pickles and casually rewriting timelines. Simple declarative scene. Wild metaphor. His nervous system is a projector, and Prismo is the movie. Here is the thing. Their relationship runs in one direction. If the old man wakes up, the dream ends. Prismo vanishes. The time room evaporates. Every wish currently hanging in existence loses its anchor. But as long as the old man sleeps, this bright, talkative, reality-warping version of him is effectively immortal, a god on a very fragile leash. Immortality with a snooze button. Think about that for a second. The being with all the visible power is the dependent one, the quiet, unconscious human. No lasers, no spells, no titles, is the real ontological heavyweight. That's the consciousness with ownership. The dream is the side project. Philosophers of mind would have a field day here. You have a dream that can talk, remember, form friendships, feel lonely, and negotiate with the lich. You have a dream that can see every timeline at once and still get emotionally invested in whether Finn and Jake are hanging out tonight. In this video, we're going to call that what it looks like. A person. A very inconvenient person if you're trying to write a neat metaphysics textbook. Because Prismo isn't a fuzzy, drifting hallucination. He has continuity. He remembers every wish. He has preferences, habits, favorite snacks, a specific couch groove worn into the fabric of the time room. He cares when people die. He mourns when he himself is erased. If a being can feel, care and remember across time, how different is that from anyone walking around ooh? We're going to leave that as a soft question in your mind as you drift. If you met Prismo, laughed with him, argued over the ethics of a wish, and then someone told you he was only a dream, would that make the experience less real? Or would it just mean that reality, in that specifically Adventure Time way, is wider than the waking world? And while the old man keeps sleeping, Prismo keeps watching, which means he's there for everything. The Mushroom War's quiet flashes, Simon's slow unraveling, the rise of Ooh, and the first baby steps of a human boy who will one day knock on his door. What is real in a world made of dreams and radiation? So you have Prismo, pressed flat against the fabric of reality like a friendly shadow, watching all of this unfold on his infinite wall of screens. A dream, watching a world that already feels like a dream. Ooh, this far future Earth, where nuclear fire and ancient magic shook hands and never quite let go. Here is the thing. Prismo being a dream isn't actually that different from Ooh being a consequence. The Mushroom War takes human technology, human fear, human desire for power, and detonates it across the planet. And what grows out of the crater is half science experiment, half fairy tale. Candy people, built from biomass and polymer chemistry, elementals whose emotions steer the climate. A vampire queen who treats immortality like a weird side gig. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the universe shrugs and says, sure, that's real now. So then you look back at Prismo, this wishmaster at the center of time, and you have to ask, does it matter that he's technically just an old man's dream? He laughs. He gets lonely. He cares if Jake visits. He dies, and people grieve him. Think about that for a second. If a consciousness can love, suffer, And change, what extra stamp does it need from reality to count? We're going to see this question repeat over and over, especially with Simon. Simon Petrikov, the gentle human who loved Betty and old artifacts, slowly dissolves into the Ice King as the crown rewires his mind over centuries. One identity blurs into another. Names change. Memories fall out like loose pages. But to Marceline, to Betty, to Finn, the emotional truth never stops being real. Simon is still in there, even when he isn't. His existence is messy, but his impact on the timeline is solid. And that's the pattern everywhere you look. Ooh is full of people who molt out of their own lives. Princess Bubblegum literally grows herself from pink goo into a monarch and a scientist. Finn cycles from hero to farmer to weary adult. Even the Lich, this pure annihilation impulse, keeps getting folded into new forms and alternate universes. Like the universe itself can't decide whether he's a nightmare or a lesson. At a certain point, Adventure Time starts to feel like layers of dreams stacked on top of each other. Human dreams of progress and control, buried under magical dreams of dominion and elemental balance, wrapped around personal dreams of home, friendship, and just one more adventure. Prismo's time room is only the most literal version, a place where every wish exposes what someone secretly believes reality should be. And to understand why any of this matters, why a dream's heartbreak can steer a multiverse, why a broken man in a crown can bend time with one forgotten wish, we have to go backwards. Past the Candy Kingdoms and the vampires, past the ruins and the quiet snow, all the way to the human world that still thought it was normal. The world that went to sleep under city lights, not knowing what was already waking up beneath them. Before the mushroom cloud, a quiet human world. So we go back, further than the ruins, further than the ice, to a world that would look almost boring if you glanced at it from the center of time. A blue planet, traffic lights, apartment windows glowing in the evening, museums closing at 5, people scrolling through their tiny screens, convinced that this is what reality is for, that this is the main timeline and not just a quiet prologue. On this earth, the magic is there, but it's like a rumor that never quite makes the news. Elemental powers hum in the background of existence. Old spirits and ancient rules still technically in effect, but if you asked most humans about it, they would shrug and point you to a science documentary. Here is the thing. The universe is already weird, already multiversal, already threaded with power and desire, but the human world has collectively agreed to ignore that part. They believe in research grants and weather reports. They believe in cause and effect. Let's start in a museum under fluorescent lights that buzz gently like tired bees. There's a mild-mannered antiquarian walking through the aisles, glasses slipping down his nose, talking to a camera about strange crowns and older civilizations. Simon Petrikov. He is not a warrior, he is not a politician. He's just a gentle, curious man who loves artifacts the way some people love gossip, who would rather catalogue a mysterious gem than argue about global tensions on the news. Simon's world is full of labs and lecture halls, not castles and candy people. Governments posture, satellites orbit, research facilities run late-night experiments. Somewhere a bored grad student falls asleep at a desk covered in printouts. Somewhere else a general stares at a map lit up with theoretical strike zones. The drift toward catastrophe is slow, almost polite. No one stands up and announces, "The Mushroom War is coming." It's just a series of small escalations, strange discoveries, classified reports that never reach the evening broadcast. And yet, every now and then, reality flickers. A researcher records an energy reading that doesn't fit any model. A child has a dream about a world made of candy and wakes up laughing. An elemental presence stirs a little more restlessly in its domain. Think about that for a second. An entire planet confidently walking forward, eyes on stock prices and movie releases, while the deeper layers of existence quietly rearrange themselves. We're going to see this contrast again and again in that specifically Adventure Time way. Technology on the surface, magic underneath. Humans drawing neat borders on a map, while ancient forces look at those lines and shrug. Simon carefully turning a strange crown in his hands, fascinated by its age, not yet aware of the wish buried in its ice, or the power it will have over his own mind and timeline. This era is the last deep breath, the pause before the chord resolves. Streets are still intact, oceans still recognizable, constellations still mapped for navigation instead of prophecy. If you could freeze time here and live in this moment forever, you might think the universe is stable, that existence has finally settled down. But small choices are already stacking up, political tensions tightening like a drawn bow, experiments edging closer to forces no one fully understands, the invisible overlap between science and sorcery getting thinner every day. You can almost feel the future pressing in from the edges of the frame, and when the bowstring finally snaps, when the mushroom war blooms across the sky, this quiet human world will not disappear exactly. It will melt, fracture, and dream itself into something new. The Earth will wake up as Ooh, and in the next part of our story, that gentle blue planet will learn what happens when technology, magic, and annihilation all make a wish at the same time. The elementals, fire, ice, candy, and slime beneath it all, when the Earth wakes up as Ooh, it does not wake up alone. Under the ash, under the broken cities and the quiet oceans, something older is already breathing. Not technology, not even magic the way wizards understand it. 4 slow, patient currents of power that have been there since before humans ever named the stars. Let's start under the surface of reality. Imagine the universe not as empty space, but as a kind of woven blanket. And running through that blanket are 4 bright threads: fire, ice, candy, and slime. Not metaphors, not just elements on a chart, actual cosmic tendencies baked into existence that decide how heat behaves, how cold remembers, how sweetness organizes itself, and how decay refuses to stay still. Here is the thing. In Adventure Time, those threads do not just sit there, they keep trying to stand up and walk around. So across ages, each element keeps generating an avatar, a living focal point. There is the ice, condensing into beings like Urgent's Evergreen, and much later into Simon with his crown and his fractured timeline of memories. There is fire, blazing through ancient queens and, eventually, through Flame Princess and her entire volcanic court. Candy rises as a strange, smiling intelligence that will one day call itself Princess Bubblegum. Slime pools into rulers like Slime Princess, all ooze and confidence and perpetual motion. Most of the time, during the human era, they are quiet, not gone, dormant. The avatars walk around as individuals with problems and opinions and questionable dating histories, but the full elemental power is like tectonic plates under their personalities, grinding in slow motion. You could live your whole life in one of those old human cities and never realize that beneath the sidewalks, the universe is arguing with itself about whether everything should burn, freeze, crystallize into candy, or melt into slime. Think about that for a second. Humans are building malls and missile silos on top of a cosmic argument. They make their own rules, their own weapons, their own wishes, and they barely notice the ancient powers humming under the floorboards. It feels stable. It feels like the center of time is somewhere in a government lab, not in a multiverse of elementals waiting for their turn. And then the mushroom war hits. The bowstring doesn't just snap, it digs into the wood. The blast does not only destroy cities, it fractures the geological soul of the planet. Cracks run not just through rock, but through those deep elemental plates. Fire leaks up in curtains of magma and sentient flame. Ice spills out in impossible glaciers, and one haunted crown. Candy blooms where there should only be rubble bubbling into forests and kingdoms. Slime floods low places, turning ruins into shimmering, gelatinous seas. We're going to see those aftershocks everywhere. In the cozy tyranny of the Candy Kingdom, where sweetness becomes law. In the lonely spires of the Ice Kingdom, where memory freezes along with the landscape. In the fiery realms Finn and Jake will explore, where anger and passion have actual lava. Even in the silly, slippery territories of slime, where the rules of form and seriousness just dissolve. And as we move forward through this new world, each elemental will keep making its own quiet wish for what Ooh should be. Because the apocalypse is not the end here. In that specifically Adventure Time way, it is just the moment when the oldest powers finally get loud enough to be heard. Simon and the Crown, a love story at the edge of the world. The apocalypse is not the end here. It's just the moment the world changes key. And somewhere far from the lava and the elementals and the loud, glowing edges of reality, there is a quiet little love story beginning in a library. Let's start with Simon Petrikov before the Crown, before the ice, before the universe decides to balance itself on his nervous shoulders. He's an academic, a little awkward, a little too excited about cursed artifacts, the kind of man who apologizes to museum display cases when he bumps into them. And then there's Betty Groff, another scholar orbiting the same worlds of history and myth, drawn to the strange, like a moth to a very well-footnoted flame. They meet over books and coffee and late-night arguments about magic versus science, about whether the multiverse has rules or just vibes. Simple declarative. They are in love. Vivid metaphor. Their relationship feels like a warm lamp in the corner of a cold, indifferent universe. A small, steady light against the oncoming storm of time. Here is the thing about Simon's discovery of the Crown. It does not arrive with thunder. No choir of ghosts. Just a package, a transaction, an artifact catalogued with a number and a brief description. A magical, possibly cursed Nordic crown. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the most cosmic objects enter the timeline like misplaced mail. He puts it on once, as a joke, as an experiment, as a man chasing knowledge. And reality tilts. For a heartbeat, he feels power rushing through his mind like glacial rivers carving new valleys into his thoughts. He sees patterns in existence that no human is meant to see. The center of time flickering at the edge of his vision like a distant TV left on in another room. At first, it seems almost fine. He can take it off. He can talk to Betty. They can laugh about it. But the Crown remembers him. It begins to whisper, not in words, but in impulses, in little nudges. Put me back on. I can protect you. I can grant your deepest wish for safety, for knowledge, for control in a collapsing world. And protection is tempting when the mushroom war starts to rumble on the horizon like distant thunder. Think about that for a second. You're a gentle man standing at the edge of the end of the world, holding a device that can rewrite your fear into ice. We're going to watch Simon slip, not all at once, but in tiny forgotten moments. A missed appointment. A name that won't come. A joke he used to tell that now feels like someone else's memory. The Crown offers power and steals context. It keeps his body moving through the timeline, while quietly editing the man inside. Betty sees it first. The way his eyes linger on nothing. The way he talks to the air as if there's someone else in the room. She is brilliant, stubborn, catastrophically devoted. She tries to research it, to reason with it, to outstudy an ancient artifact that predates their entire civilization. He is not evil, he is not even indifferent. He is just bound by a new set of rules older than himself. There is sadness there, confusion, the terror of someone who feels his own existence fraying but can't remember who to ask for help. Their love becomes a quiet resistance against the crown's cold logic, against the universe's casual cruelty, against time itself. And the tragic joke is that this story will not stay in this decade or even this reality, because Simon and Betty's thread will stretch across centuries and timelines, through wishes and alternate universes, looping back into the center of time itself. And somewhere out there, another power is already watching their future play out on a distant screen, waiting for the moment when a desperate man will finally ask for a wish. The Mushroom War as distant thunder, and while that distant power watches, the world those screens are pointed at quietly ends. Not with a close-up, not with screaming in your ears. From where we are, the Mushroom War arrives like distant weather. You see it first as a strange brightness on the horizon, a line of white that does not behave like lightning, pulsing in slow, deliberate heartbeats. Then the rumbles roll in, too low and heavy to be thunder, like the universe itself is dragging furniture across the floor upstairs. Think about that for a second, an apocalypse that from far enough away just sounds like a storm. The sky changes color by degrees, blues washed out into pale humming greens, a thin metallic dusk that never quite becomes night. On empty highways, glass windshields catch those far-off flashes and throw them back in tiny, silent echoes. Streetlights blink, fail, and stay dark. Here is the thing. From a distance, the end of the world is mostly waiting. Long pauses, radio static, no explanation. We're going to stay out here, far from ground zero, because this is a bedtime story, not a disaster reel. Buildings do fall, but we only meet them afterward, already quiet, already leaning. Windows are broken, but the shards are just glitter on the pavement, catching the new wrong colors of the sky. Cars sit at intersections where no one will ever get a green light again. Doors hang open like the city tried to take a breath and forgot to finish. And into those cracks, something else begins to move. Grass pushes up through asphalt seams, fast and strangely confident, as if the rules of time have loosened. Vines climb billboards that no one will read, tracing around faces of products that no longer exist. Little eddies of wild magic pool in basements and subway tunnels, invisible but very real, like leftover static from a wish that was never properly phrased. Deep below, in places older than the war, elemental forces feel the impact. Fire, ice, candy, slime. Their domains shudder as the blast rattles the bones of reality. The war's energy doesn't just destroy, it rearranges. Physics gets a little playful, in that specifically Adventure Time way. A deer might wake up with hands. A candy seed might decide it wants to be a kingdom. The map is the same, but the meaning of land and life begins to drift toward ooh. In the heart of that blast, something ancient hears an invitation. The Lich is not created here so much as uncovered, like a fossil of pure annihilation dug up by human arrogance. His power rides the shockwave, seeping into soil, into water, into whatever fragile existence is left. He is a wish in reverse, not let there be, but let there not. And somewhere, in another timeline entirely, Prismo will one day watch that pattern unfold on his infinite screens. For now, on this quiet earth, the sound cuts out. The distant flashes fade. The sky settles into a tired, permanent twilight. In the ruins of a supermarket, Simon and Marceline move through the aisles like ghosts learning how to be people. Shelves half fallen, cereal boxes slumped in bright, deflated colors. Simon pushes a shopping cart, not because they need it, but because it feels like a rule of the old world he can still follow. Marcy rides in the basket, small boots kicking the air, hugging a toy he found for her between broken jars and scattered cans. They share canned soup heated over a little blue flame from the crown, sitting on an overturned freezer like it's a kitchen table. Outside, the wind threads through empty parking lots and overgrown medians, carrying the faint glow of distant, mutating cities. Inside, it's just the two of them, trading stories, trading the last normal pieces of Simon's voice. Let's start with this image and hold it. A gentleman in a torn coat, a child with tired eyes, and a universe that has just reset its rules without asking anyone's permission. Their wandering from here will be a trail of small, tender moments stitched through a broken landscape, sharing blankets in abandoned theaters, drawing faces on dusty windows, naming stray, half-magical creatures that decide to follow them for a day. The war is over, but its echo is everywhere. In the way shadows bend a little wrong, in the way the air sometimes tastes like cold metal, and sometimes like sugar. The old world has ended, quietly, and a new one is already beginning to dream of itself. And as Simon and Marceline step out of that supermarket and back into the wide, empty streets, the first true age of ice and memory is about to begin, stretching forward through centuries, all the way toward crowns, vampires, candy kingdoms, and a boy who will one day wake up in Ooh and think this reality is just how the universe has always been. Marceline and Simon. Small comforts in a broken world. They leave the supermarket with a shopping cart of borrowed normalcy, and then the doors hiss shut behind them, like the world closing its eyes again. The air is too quiet. The sky is wrong. And in the middle of all that post-war silence, there is a man with a crown in his bag and a little girl holding his hand like it's the last solid object in the universe. Let's start with that hand. Small, sticky, trembling a little. Simon finds Marceline in the ruins the way you find a memory you weren't ready to remember yet, by accident and then all at once. She's hungry, hoarse from crying, clutching a broken toy. He is already hearing whispers from the crown, already losing names and days. But here is the thing. He looks at her and makes a wish he can't say out loud. To be enough, to keep her safe, to stay himself just a little longer than reality will actually allow. So we're going to linger in the quiet days, because there are a few. A rusted office lobby where they camp behind a reception desk, sharing soup from a can he warms over a candle like it's fine dining. A parking garage where he draws constellations on the ceiling with a flashlight, inventing new stars because the old ones are covered in ash. He sings to her in a cracked academic baritone, lullabies and old folk songs and half-remembered pop. Sometimes he forgets the lyrics and just hums, and she hums back, and for a second you could almost believe the Mushroom War never happened. He gives her Hambo in one of those moments. Just a ragged little toy, but in that specifically Adventure Time way, it's also a portable universe of comfort. A rule against despair. He presses it into her arms with this nervous, apologetic smile, as if he's asking permission to care about her. Think about that for a second. A man whose mind is being rewritten by an ancient artifact still trying to negotiate with a child's feelings. But the crown is patient. It waits, and the world outside their little camp keeps getting sharper teeth. Mutated creatures stalk the empty streets. Bandits, half feral, learn that power is just whatever you can take. Simon holds out as long as he can, and then one night something finds them. He puts the crown on. It works. Of course it works. Blue power roars out of him, freezing monsters mid-lunge, turning the alley into a glacier. It's beautiful and terrible, like watching time itself crack. And every time he does it, he comes back a little slower, a little colder. Names slip, directions blur. He starts calling her little girl instead of Marceline, and she laughs it off, because what else can a child do? From her side, it's simpler and so much sadder. She has one protector, one adult, in the entire multiverse. And he keeps going away while still standing right in front of her. He stares too long at empty walls, mutters to no one, disappears on errands that end with snow in his hair on a clear day. Why does he have to leave? Why does using the power that keeps her alive also take him further away down some invisible timeline she can't see? There is sadness there, resignation, the quiet terror of a kid realizing that love does not guarantee consistency. Their nights get shorter, their walks get longer, and the gaps in his memory get wide enough for whole futures to fall through. One day, inevitably, he walks out into the white and doesn't come back the same. And the echo of that choice, that half-finished goodbye in the ruins of the old world, is going to ring through 1,000 years of existence. It will live in Marceline's wary friendships, in a vampire queen's lonely songs, in a mad ice king who keeps trying to kidnap princesses because he can't remember the one little girl he already failed. Somewhere ahead, Ooh is waiting. Candy kingdoms, vampires, wizards, and a boy who thinks this is just how reality is. But before we meet him, we have to follow Simon a little further into the snow and watch what the crown finally does when there's no one left to pull him back. From ruins to kingdoms, the slow rise of Ooh, so Simon walks into the white, and the world just keeps going without him. The blizzard softens, the screaming stops, the cameras of the universe, if there were any, slowly pull back, and you're left with a quiet planet that has time now. Time to mutate. Time to heal in that specifically Adventure Time way, where healing looks a little bit like getting stranger every century. Let's start with the ground itself. The blast glass and melted highways cool into black scars, and then the radiation and magic begin to argue over reality. Not loudly, just a constant negotiation, century after century, until coastlines slump, mountains bubble up where office towers used to be, and the old continents fracture into a patchwork of impossible biomes. Here is the thing. Ooh isn't a clean new world laid on top of the old Earth. It's Earth having a very elaborate dream about itself. In one timeline slice, a forest grows through a parking garage, roots wrapping sedans like they're fossils. In another, an entire mall sinks, slowly, until only its glass skylight peeks up in the middle of a swamp, waiting to become a dungeon. Suburbs dissolve under creeping moss, then reappear as enchanted forests where cul-de-sacs turn into rings of mushrooms and backyard pools open into underground lakes. You walk through Ooh later, and you're really walking through a graveyard of escalators and food courts. Meanwhile, life starts making different choices. The old human biology is still there, but it's on the back foot. Most humans either vanish, die, or retreat into hidden enclaves, bunkers that become underground villages, sea platforms that turn into rusted sky islands, sealed biodomes full of descendants who think the outside air is a myth. They survive, but they don't dominate. They're a rumor in their own timeline. Above them, new citizens of existence clock in. Candy people congeal from enchanted sugar clouds and runaway candy biomass, wobbling into sentience with smiles that are a little too wide. Animals start talking, not as a metaphor, but because language leaks into them from ambient magic and leftover human cartoons. Sentient objects wake up, a sword that remembers being forged, a toaster that has opinions, a video game console that dreams of the multiverse. Think about that for a second. The apocalypse ends, and the planet responds by inventing a population of snack-based philosophers. Threaded through all of this are the long-lived witnesses. Marceline survives the war, and then keeps surviving, watching moles sink and kingdoms rise, while her own timeline stretches into a kind of immortal adolescence. The vampires linger like stains on history, then are mostly removed, but their era leaves a taste in the air. And Simon, now Ice King, staggers through the centuries as a moving glitch in reality. A crown-powered ghost who remembers nothing clearly but still carries the emotional weight of the old world. He is not alone in that. There are elementals, ice, fire, candy, slime, whose power lines run deep under Oo, older than the Mushroom War, and yet strangely energized by it. They are continuity given elemental form. They remember balances that no one else recalls. And then, in a lab made from repurposed disaster, a new kind of being prints itself. We're going to meet her properly later, but for now you only need the image. A mass of candy biomass, experimental and unstable, coalescing into someone who will call herself Bonibel Bubblegum. She is literally brewed from the post-war environment, from sugar, science, and ambient magic. And she looks at this chaotic, mutated world and makes a quiet decision that will shape an entire era. She decides that sweetness should have rules, that you can take this wild, melted landscape and with enough equations and empathy and slightly tyrannical scheduling, turn it into a kingdom. A candy kingdom built over ruins, pink towers anchored in buried rebar and forgotten subway lines. Somewhere else, in a tree that used to be a house that used to be a suburb, a seed is waiting for a human boy to grow up, thinking this is normal. But before we get to Finn and Jake lounging in their living room at the center of time, we have to watch how these kingdoms crystallize, and how Bubblegum learns that even in a world made of candy, power is never as simple as it looks. Princess Bubblegum, candy, science, and control. So let's start in the quiet after the bright green horrors of the Mushroom War, when the world has stopped screaming, but the ground is still humming with leftover power. In the ruins of human supermarkets and candy aisles melted into the soil, something begins to wake up. Not a princess yet, not even a person, just a mass of pink bubbling biomass seeping through cracked tiles and broken shelves, tasting the new reality like sugar learning it has a tongue. Here is the thing about Bubblegum. She is not born, she aggregates. Little globs of candy goo, scattered by catastrophe, slowly crawl to one another over years, maybe centuries, obeying rules older than language. Fragment by fragment, a consciousness condenses. First, an awareness. Then, a question. Then, a desire to understand why the universe broke and what can be built in its place. She pulls herself into a shape with hands, with eyes, with a brain that is part laboratory and part throne room. By the time she calls herself Bonibel, she is already a scientist. She runs experiments in the skeletons of department stores, using beakers that used to hold nail polish remover and wires stripped from dead electronics. And in that specifically Adventure Time way, her first great invention is not a weapon or a shield, it's people. Candy people. Fragile, soft, smiling citizens who crack when they fall downstairs and dissolve in water, but who greet the ruined world with unearned optimism. On the surface, this looks adorable. She literally wishes safety into existence by making beings who assume the universe is kind. But think about that for a second. She is building a kingdom out of sentient marshmallows in a landscape full of vampires, leeches, and leftover human weapons of mass extinction. She is not naive. She is strategic. If everyone around you is sweet and harmless, then you, by comparison, are the one who has to be sharp. So Bubblegum becomes two people at once. There is the nurturing ruler who hands out candy, tucks her citizens into bed, and throws elaborate parties under pastel banners. And there is the quiet engineer of reality behind the curtain, running secret labs, rewriting memories, and pulling diplomatic strings so her timeline doesn't get erased by the next cosmic accident. She is not evil. She is not even indifferent. She is just bound by her own internal rules about survival and order. Underneath all of that is the candy elemental force itself, humming through her veins like a soft, insistent song. Candy, in this universe, is not just sugar, it is comfort, predictability, the power of routines and bedtimes and neatly labeled jars in a world where time and magic have gone off the rails. When she imposes order, it is personal and cosmic at the same time, as if the center of time inside her demands that chaos be wrapped in frosting and stored on a labeled shelf. And this is where her relationships begin to bend the multiverse around her. A vampire queen who remembers the old world looks at Bubblegum's perfect streets and sees control where others see safety. A human boy raised in this candy reality will someday crash against her boundaries, asking why a kingdom that feels like home is ruled like a science experiment. Wizards, demons, and other powers of Ooh will test her limits, challenge her ethics, and occasionally fall in love with her, because of course they do. We're going to watch those connections tighten over time. Marceline's ancient grief brushing against Bonnibel's need for order, Finn's heroic wish for freedom colliding with her contingency plans, all while the cosmic forces under the world keep whispering about balance. But before the boy and the vampire and the princess can argue about what a good future looks like, we still need to meet the last human who thinks he's alone and the stretchy dog who proves he isn't. The Vampire War and Marceline's long shadow. So while Finn and Jake are just learning that they aren't alone, far back in the quiet middle of the timeline, there is a different kind of loneliness stalking the world. Not a last human on Earth loneliness, a hunted livestock loneliness. Because for a long stretch after the Mushroom War, before the kingdoms really crystallize, the night belongs to vampires. Let's start with the simple version. There are not many of them, but the ones that exist are vast. The fool drifting through the sky like a lazy predatory balloon. The Empress, who doesn't just drink your blood, she drinks your will. The moon, patient and silent, regenerating in the dark. And at the center of their little multiverse of fear, the Vampire King, wearing civilization like a joke. He is not just a monster. He is an ecosystem of predation given a crown. Here is the thing. Ooh, at this point, is fragile. Small human communities, wandering animals, early magic users, Simon still unraveling somewhere with the crown. Into that soft, recovering reality, the vampires move like a recurring nightmare, feeding on whoever is unlucky enough to cross their timeline. There are no formal rules, no treaties, no candy kingdom yet to hide inside. Just the long, low pressure of being food. And then Marceline decides she's done being prey. We're going to glide over the gore and look at the war the way she remembers it centuries later. As a long, exhausting project. Not one big cinematic battle, but a series of hunts and counter-hunts that stretch across deserts of broken highways and forests, regrown over old suburbs. She tracks them. They track her. Sometimes she wins. Sometimes she barely escapes. Time keeps moving, but the conflict feels suspended, like the universe is holding its breath, while one girl and a handful of apex predators argue about who gets to own the night. Each victory costs her, and each victory changes her. When she slays a vampire, she doesn't just end a life, she absorbs their power into her own existence. Flight, invisibility, emotional manipulation, regeneration, all layered onto the half-demon child who once just wanted her dad to show up. Simple declarative, she becomes powerful. Vivid metaphor, she turns into a walking archive of every predator she has defeated. A one-woman museum of monstrosity. Think about that for a second. Every time she makes the world safer, she makes herself a little less human. There is pride there. There is horror. There is that specifically Adventure Time way of asking whether power that comes from ending monsters ever really leaves your hands clean. She wins the vampire war by becoming in some ways the last and greatest vampire. When the Vampire King finally falls, or more accurately, when he finally lets go of his role in the universe, there is a strange quiet. Predation doesn't vanish, but the organized cosmic scale farm of fear dissolves. And into that vacuum, other powers can grow. Bonnibel's Candy Kingdom, with its lab coat logic and candy citizens, can expand without nightly raids. Wizards can argue about spells instead of hiding in ruins. The map of Ooo starts to solidify into named kingdoms instead of scattered camps. Marceline, though, doesn't build a kingdom. She retreats. A cave here, a house there, long stretches of time with only a bass guitar and unreliable memory for company. She is at the center of time in her own life, watching centuries spool past, remembering humans who are long gone, and wars that no one else even knows were wars. There is loneliness there, resignation, the exhaustion of someone who has carried the wish for safety so long, it has become part of her shadow. And this is why, when Finn and Bubblegum finally orbit into her reality, their friendships feel so strangely huge. To them, she's the cool vampire with a messy room and a complicated ex. To her, they are proof that the world she bled for actually arrived. Their band practices, their arguments, their quiet reconciliations all sit on top of centuries of silence and ash. It makes every joke, every hurt feeling, every late-night song, both healing and faintly tragic, like watching children play in a city built over an ancient battlefield. Because the Vampire War doesn't just clear the field for future kingdoms, it carves out the emotional negative space that Finn and PB will eventually fill in. Marceline becomes Oo's immortal witness, carrying memories no one asked to be preserved. And somewhere, far from the ruins where she fought the king, a little boy with a funny hat is growing up in a treehouse, completely unaware that his future best friend has already saved his universe once. The question is, who saved hers? To answer that, we have to follow that boy and his stretchy dog as they start poking at the edges of her carefully constructed isolation, and at the older, colder magic still humming under the surface of Ooo. The Ice King, a crown of forgotten promises, so while that boy and his dog are laughing in a treehouse, somewhere else on the same broken earth, a man with white hair is talking to a crown that does not answer. Let's start with the erosion, because it isn't dramatic at first. It's quiet. The crown doesn't rip Simon Petrikov's mind apart in one night. It sands it down, grain by grain, over years, and then centuries, until the edges of his memories blur, and the sharp, painful image of Betty becomes a soft, distant ache he can't quite name. He is not evil. He is not even indifferent. He is just bound to an artifact whose power is older than the Mushroom War, and tuned to an elemental ice that does not care about human timelines. Here is the thing about that crown. It grants his desperate wish to survive, to protect, to keep going through a ruined universe, but it collects interest in the currency of identity. Every time Simon uses it, the ice elemental inside presses closer, whispering new priorities into his thoughts. Cold over warmth, immortality over intimacy, obsession over memory. Think about that for a second. To live long enough that the person you were becomes a rumor even to yourself. By the time Ooo really knows him, Simon is gone enough that they don't even know his name. They just see the Ice King, this ridiculous floating wizard with a pointy nose and a too long beard, blustering about his beautiful princesses as penguins waddle behind him like a low-budget royal court. He kidnaps princesses, writes terrible fan fiction, crashes parties. He is comic relief, a nuisance, the kind of villain you schedule between lunch and a nap. But in that specifically Adventure Time way, the joke is sitting on top of a glacier of tragedy, because every once in a while, something leaks through the cracks. A tape of Simon singing with Marceline, a sad little song he writes alone in his ice castle, trying to impress people who are terrified of him. His love of music survives like a fossil, a perfectly preserved imprint of the man who used to hum to calm a scared child during the end of the world. We're going to see flashes of clarity too, brief and unsettling. Moments where his voice drops, the goofiness falls away, and you hear Simon again, just for a sentence or two, before the crown pulls him back into the manic, lonely king of nothing. His icy kingdom isn't just decor, it's the physical echo of the primordial ice elemental, radiating through his fractured mind and out into reality, amplifying his madness with cosmic cold from the center of time itself. And yet, even here, the universe is quietly setting up a repair. Because as Finn and Jake step into his life, over and over, fighting him, hanging out with him, sometimes pitying him, they start to treat the Ice King not as a monster, but as a very old, very confused man. Their timeline intersects his like a warm front meeting an ancient storm, and slowly, gently, the temperature begins to change. We'll follow that change into their era, where every ridiculous encounter with the Ice King is also, secretly, a small act of healing for a relic who has been alone since before Ooh had a name. Finn's birth, the last human, or so it seems, their timeline intersects his, and then, quietly, almost as if the universe is taking a breath, another timeline begins to matter, a much smaller one, a single baby left crying on a leaf in the middle of a wild, post-apocalyptic meadow that doesn't remember what a hospital is. Here is the thing. In a land full of candy people, raimicorns, demons, and literal cosmic wish entities, the rarest creature in Ooh ends up being a regular human infant. No magic crown, no elemental power, just soft skin, small lungs, and a scream that pulls Joshua and Margaret, the dog parents, out of their cozy house and into someone else's destiny. They find him abandoned, terrified, and they do something profoundly unepic. They pick him up. They clean him. They decide very simply that he is theirs. Let's start his story there, in that backyard that becomes the unofficial center of time for the rest of the series. Finn grows up in a world that does not match his species. Jake is literally a stretchy, magical dog with absurd body physics. Their dad is a retired demon-hunting hound. Their mom is a sharp, no-nonsense terrier. And in the middle of all of that, there's Finn, a human child who bruises, who breaks bones, who can't regenerate or shapeshift or respawn. His early life plays out as a series of warm, chaotic vignettes. Muddy backyard battles against imaginary monsters that, in Ooh, are only imaginary until they suddenly aren't. Makeshift forts built out of junkyard metal and old pre-war debris, transforming into castles and spaceships through sheer narrative power. Jake stretching into ladders, parachutes, and very questionable safety devices, while Finn learns what it means to climb, fall, and get back up again. Think about that for a second. In a universe where reality can bend on command, his greatest power is just persistence. He is fragile. He is also special. Not because the multiverse secretly revolves around him, but because his humanity is a relic from before the Mushroom War, walking around inside the bright nonsense of Ooh. When a candy citizen gets hurt, they can be refrosted, regrown, reassembled. When a vampire gets staked, they come back with a new philosophy. When Finn gets hurt, it matters. The show leans into that. Scraped knees, broken arms, emotional fractures that take more than a potion to heal. We're going to watch his journey quietly mirror Ooh's. At first, it's all naive heroics. Save the princess, punch the monster, high-five your stretchy brother, and go home for noodles. Victory is simple. Morality is binary. The rules feel clear. But as time moves on, Finn's questions get heavier. What if the monster has a reason? What if the princess is complicit? What if the lich, the crown, the wishes, and the ancient wars are all part of one long tangled desire for control over existence itself? And here's the pattern interrupt. The show doesn't slow down to announce this shift. It hides it inside fart jokes and dungeon crawls. One day you're watching Finn and Jake fight a giant snail. The next you realize that every silly quest has been gently training Finn and you to handle cosmic scale grief. From here, we ease into their adventuring era. Episodic quests, dungeons, and detours begin to reveal the deeper lore you've been drifting through. Simon's tragedy, elemental cycles, multiverse fractures. The boy in the backyard becomes the hero of Ooh, not because a prophecy demanded it, but because, in that specifically Adventure Time way, he keeps choosing to show up. And as Finn and Jake step out of the treehouse and into their first official adventures, the universe starts answering back. Jake the dog, magic, family, and chill wisdom. The universe answers with a dog. Not a prophecy, not a beam of light from the center of time, just this yellow, stretchy, slightly lumpy dog who lives in the same little house, eats the same weird breakfasts, and calls the same humans mom and dad. Here is the thing. Before Jake is Finn's partner in destiny, he is simply Finn's brother born into Joshua and Margaret's family, padding across the same floorboards where a foundling human baby will later crawl. Let's start with that image. Joshua and Margaret, retired adventurers, already raising Jermaine, already half embedded in the quiet domestic timeline that comes after power and danger. Somewhere out in the multiverse, cosmic forces are rearranging reality, but in their little house, a magical pup appears, a mystery with stretchy powers and no clear origin. And they just keep him. No prophecy consultation, no council of wizards. Just, yeah, this is our kid now. Think about that for a second. Jake grows up in that specifically Adventure Time way where the bizarre is just part of breakfast. His body can bend, expand, flatten, and reshape, ignoring the usual rules of bones and skin, like reality is made of warm taffy and he has editing privileges. He can turn into a boat, a shield, a giant, or a tiny key. The show will later hint that this isn't just a fun party trick, that his powers are a fragment of something older and stranger in the universe, connected to shapeshifters, cosmic beings, even reincarnation across timelines. But day to day, Jake is not meditating on existence. He is napping, he is making sandwiches, he is writing songs about bacon pancakes. Where Finn charges toward danger with knight-in-training intensity, Jake leans back, hands behind his head, and says, "Relax, dude, it'll work out." He is not reckless. He is not wise in the classical robe and staff sense. He is just profoundly confident that time will sort itself out. And that contrast is the emotional engine of their partnership. Finn is the wish, the desire to change everything, to fix every monster and moral dilemma. Jake is the acceptance, the soft gravity that says, "You did what you could, now let's go home." When Finn spirals about destiny or failure, Jake will crack a dry, slightly absurd observation, stretch himself into a goofy shape, and puncture the tension like a balloon. We're going to see, though, that this chill philosophy has limits. Jake's powers link him to a larger cosmic ecosystem he barely understands, and later revelations about his parentage, his children, and his place in the multiverse will press against that easygoing surface. What happens when the dog who believes everything will be fine has to face his own mortality? When time stops feeling infinite, even for a stretchy body? Somewhere ahead in the timeline, the universe will answer again, not just with a dog, but with a whole found family built around him. But before we get there, We need to sit with the world they're about to explore together. Early adventures, monsters, dungeons, and hidden histories. So we sit with that world they're about to explore, and then very quickly, we're not sitting anymore. We're waking up in a treehouse. Morning light in Ooh looks a little wrong if you pay attention to it for too long, like the universe healed over a scar and never mentioned it. But Finn doesn't think about that. Finn just stretches, yells, and grabs a sword. Here is the thing. The rhythm of their early days is almost ritualistic. Wake up! Yell! Gear up! Jake pulls his viola from under a pile of junk. Finn straps on whatever weapon hasn't broken yet, and they tumble out the door like gravity is a polite suggestion. Somewhere, someone needs help. A candy citizen is in trouble, or a dungeon just opened its mouth a little too wide. It's not destiny in their minds. It's just what you do when you're a hero and your best friend is a shape-shifting dog with unlimited confidence in your continued existence. Let's start with Princess Bubblegum. At first, she's the pink science monarch who calls them in to fight candy zombies or wrangle wild experiments. Simple, direct. But every visit to the Candy Kingdom adds a layer. The way her lab hums with pre-war machines. The way her eyes linger on old terminals and broken screens. You're watching a ruler, yes, but also a survivor reverse engineering a dead civilization, one cheerful experiment at a time. Then there's Ice King, swooping in like an off-brand villain, all desire and no insight. He wants princesses, he wants attention. He wants without understanding why he is lonely in the first place. In those early episodes, he's comic relief and nuisance. But the crown on his head hums with ancient power, and every time he uses it, reality shivers just a little. Think about that for a second. A tragic artifact from the Mushroom War era introduced to you as a hat for a sad wizard who writes fanfiction. Marceline drifts through these days like a ghost who forgot to haunt. She teases them, fights them, hangs out on their couch. And in that specifically Adventure Time way, the show lets you notice the bass guitar made from an axe, the ruined human buildings she treats like childhood playgrounds, the way old signage in the background still uses human languages no one comments on. The multiverse is enormous, but here, the past is literally just underfoot. We're going to glide across dungeons where the walls are lined with rusted missiles, through fields where broken satellites are buried like stones. The episodes feel silly, self-contained. A quest for a crystal apple here, a cursed sword there. But every monster has rules. Every kingdom has boundaries. Every friendship has tiny fractures that will matter later when time itself starts to bend. And somewhere in that routine of breakfast, battle, and bedtime, the universe prepares its first truly cosmic disruption for them. Not as a meteor, not as a prophecy, as a perfect sandwich. As a wish, as the moment a friendly, glowing being at the center of time asks Finn what he really wants. And Finn, for once, has to answer. We haven't reached that time room yet, but the road to Prismo's couch is being paved quietly, with every ruined arcade cabinet, every awkward hug, every early adventure that pretends it's just a joke, right until it isn't. Back to the time room, Jake's perfect sandwich. And then, almost before you realize it, we're there. Not in Ooh. Not in a forest or a dungeon or on some rickety skyship. We're in the quiet place behind all of that. The place we've been orbiting this whole time without landing. The time room. Let's start with how Finn and Jake actually get there, because in that specifically Adventure Time way, the first trip to the center of time isn't announced with trumpets or prophecy. They basically stumble in. One moment they're on an adventure, chasing danger and treasure like they always do, and the next, they've slipped sideways through reality and landed in what looks at first glance like a cosmic basement rec room. Infinite timelines flicker on the walls like a billion muted TV channels. There's a couch, there are snacks, there is, inexplicably, a jar of pickles. And floating above it all, two-dimensional and glowing this soft, friendly pink, is Prismo, watching the multiverse like you might watch a late-night movie when you can't sleep. Here is the thing. For someone who lives at the center of time, Prismo's vibe is aggressively casual. He greets Finn and Jake like they're old friends who just walked in the back door. No thunder, no judgment. Just, hey dudes, and a kind of delighted surprise that anyone has wandered into his existence at all. And Jake, being Jake, does not immediately ask for ultimate power or infinite treasure. He asks for a sandwich. Not just any sandwich, though. A perfect sandwich. He starts describing it with this almost ritual precision. Toasted bread, crispy bacon, sizzling but not burnt, perfect eggs with the yolk just runny enough, pickles with the right crunch, special cosmic meat, everything stacked in the exact right order, down to the condiments and the way the flavors should balance in his mouth. Think about that for a second. At the scale of this universe, where a single wish can erase a timeline, the first wish we actually see Jake make is basically brunch. Prismo listens. Really listens. This is where we're going to see how his power actually works in a way that feels safe enough to fall asleep to. He doesn't twist the wish. He doesn't try to teach a harsh moral lesson. He just interprets every word literally, with the precision of a cosmic lawyer and the enthusiasm of a lonely host finally getting to cook for someone. And then the sandwich appears. Perfect temperature, perfect smell, perfect structural integrity. Jake takes a bite and has that quiet, eyes-closed moment of transcendence that only exists in cartoons and very good diners. It's low stakes, it's silly, but it tells you everything. Prismo must grant what is clearly asked. One wish per person, no wishing for more wishes, no editing the desire into something wiser. He is not evil. He is not even indifferent. He is just bound by rules older than he is. Notice the hangout energy while all of this is happening. Finn flops on the couch. Jake lounges. Prismo's voice drifts around them like late-night radio. They joke, they snack, they watch reality together. You can feel how much Prismo craves this. Not worship, not fear, just company. Someone to sit with him in the endless channels of existence and say, "Whoa, that's wild," when a timeline does something unexpected. And buried inside this cozy sandwich moment is a quiet warning about what this room can do. If a detailed description of breakfast can bend reality, what happens when someone like the Lich walks in and spends his one wish on extinction instead of eggs? What happens when Finn, with his tangled heart and heroic guilt, finally answers the question, what do you really want? For now, the time room smells like toast and pickles and possibility. But the next wishes we visit here will not be so harmless. The Lich's wish, ending all life with a whisper, and then the toast smell is gone. The time room doesn't go dark. Exactly. It goes empty. Like somebody opened a door in the center of time and let all the warmth leak out. Screens flicker, colors drain, and the Lich steps in, this walking absence, this negative space in a robe, and you can almost feel the universe hold its breath. Even Prismo, who jokes about everything, goes very, very still. Here is the thing about the Lich in this moment. He doesn't rant, he doesn't roar, he doesn't monologue about destiny. He just walks up to the cosmic wishmaster at the center of time and uses his one wish like a scalpel. I wish for the extinction of all life. 5 words. No qualifiers. No loopholes. Just a clean, absolute desire to subtract existence from reality. Think about that for a second. Prismo has heard every flavor of wish: immortality, love, wealth, a really good sandwich. But extinction is different. That is not a wish for more. That is a wish for less than nothing. He is not evil. He is not even indifferent. He is just bound by rules older than the multiverse itself. And the rules say, clear wish, one per person, granted literally. So Prismo does what he always does. He grants it. But he cannot simply snap and unmake all timelines, because that would break the deeper rules we never fully see. Instead, he does something quieter and stranger, and in that specifically Adventure Time way, almost merciful. He creates a new timeline, Farm World. In Farm World, the Mushroom War still happens, but it never fully detonates the magical weirdness that turns Earth into ooh. The bomb's power is diverted. Its necromantic core never flowers into the Lich. No candy kingdoms, no cosmic wizards, no Finn and Jake swinging through the trees. Just snow, dirt, scavenged barns, and a boy with a hat trying to keep his family alive. The Lich's influence doesn't vanish. It is displaced, contained inside the unrealized potential of that bomb, sleeping like a curse in the ice. The immediate outcome of the wish is not a screaming apocalypse across the multiverse, but a fork in the road, one reality where ooh still exists, another where the Lich's birth is delayed, rerouted into a different kind of suffering. We're going to stay with that for a moment, because this is where Prismo's ethics get interesting. On paper, he did exactly what was asked: extinction of all life in a timeline custom built to absorb the wish. The Lich spends his one cosmic shot and gets a cold farm universe instead of instant universal silence. But look at the cost. Farmworld Finn grows up under scarcity, not candy light. His choices are harsher. His world is smaller. Pain doesn't stop. It just wears a different coat. Wishes do not erase consequences. They move them. They redirect where the suffering goes and who has to carry it. And this pattern will matter, because when Finn later stands in this same room and uses his wish to undo his own damage, the universe will answer with the same logic. Not deletion. Diversion. Another timeline, another quiet burden. The Lich thinks he has spoken the last word. Really, he has just added one more branch to an already tangled tree of time. One more reality flickering on Prismo's wall of screens, waiting for a different boy in a different world to make a different choice. Farm World, a different childhood for a different Finn. On one of Prismo's endless screens, the Lich's wish doesn't erase life. It redirects it. Reality flinches, time takes a sidestep, and suddenly there is a quiet Earth where the apocalypse landed differently, where magic never quite blooms into ooh. This is Farm World. Let's start with the air. In ooh, the post-war world feels like a collage made by a child god. Candy kingdoms, lava castles, talking rain clouds. Farm World is the same wound with less glitter poured into it. The Mushroom War still happened, but its fallout is more radiation than wizardry, more rust than rainbow. No candy people wandering around like cheerful biohazards. No vampires perched on floating ruins. Just snow, scrap metal, and humans clinging to existence with frost-bitten fingers. Here is the thing. Removing the Lich's influence doesn't give you peace. It gives you a different kind of danger. Without the full magical bloom of the post-war chaos, the balance of power shifts toward guns, engines, and hoarded resources instead of wands and elemental crowns. Bandits on snowmobiles replace demon kings, but the fear in your chest is the same. The universe has not become kinder. It has just traded one flavor of nightmare for another in that specifically Adventure Time way. In this timeline, Finn grows up not as the last human in a candy-colored wonderland, but as one boy on a struggling farm under a sky that feels heavy instead of whimsical. He still has a hat, but it's more practical than iconic. He still has a family, but it's smaller, more brittle, always one bad winter away from disappearing. There is no Jake lounging on a pillow, stretching across the room. No cosmic dog at the center of time in his life, warping reality to turn danger into a joke. Farmworld Finn learns different rules. Firewood, not firewolves. Canned beans, not royal feasts. His quests are not for enchanted swords, but for clean water and enough ammunition. When he fights, it isn't to save a kingdom of sentient candy, it's to keep raiders away from his home. Think about that for a second. The same heroic impulse, the same core of bravery, pressed through a narrower, harsher filter until it comes out lean and desperate. We're going to see that Farmworld is a mirror that makes Ooh look almost impossibly lucky. In Ooh, Finn's heroism is framed by whimsy. He rescues princesses made of bubblegum, does dungeons with a wisecracking dog, stumbles into cosmic revelations because a door happened to be weird. In Farmworld, that same heroism is stripped of neon and musical numbers, leaving behind a boy who has to be brave without the universe winking at him. And that's the quiet horror and comfort of this timeline. One wish, one sentence from a skeletal mouth, and the multiverse tilts just enough that Finn's entire existence reconfigures. Not erased, diverted. The show is whispering that Ooh's balance of magic and menace, of jokes and annihilation, is incredibly fragile. It could have been snow and silence instead of candy and chaos. So if this is what happens when the Lich is removed from the board, what happens when Farmworld Finn finally brushes against the cosmic power that created his world in the first place? Finn's counter-wish, trying to fix what shouldn't exist Farmworld. Finn reaches toward that cosmic power like a kid reaching for a light switch in a dark hallway, not realizing it's wired into the entire multiverse. He's seen his world twisted by the Lich's wish, watched his family stand on the edge of annihilation, and there is this quiet human reaction that rises up in him. Fix it. Undo it. Make it so this never had to happen. Here is the thing. Finn's horror isn't abstract. It's not, oh no, reality has been compromised. It's his dad's face, his family's fear, the cold logic of the Lich staining a timeline that should have just been snow and chores and late-night cartoons. So when Prismo offers that impossible, dangerous generosity, one wish, Finn does what almost anyone would do in his place. He reaches for the biggest lever he can imagine and pulls. Depending on which version you follow, he phrases it differently, but the desire is the same. Sometimes it's I wish the Lich's wish was undone. Sometimes it's closer to I wish the Mushroom War never happened. In both cases, he's trying to rewind time so far back that the chain of cause and effect just dissolves. No Mushroom War, no Lich, no cursed crown wandering through the ruins, no farm world at all. Think about that for a second. His solution to the pain in front of him is to erase the entire path that led to his own existence. And Prismo hears this at the center of time and does not flinch. He cannot say no. He cannot negotiate. He can only interpret. Prismo is not evil. He is not even indifferent. He is just bound by rules older than the universe itself. So he takes Finn's wish and runs it through the cosmic legal code he lives inside. You cannot simply snap one reality back without invalidating every choice made inside it. You can, however, create another branch where events unfold differently. So instead of one grand rewind, we get more timelines. Another Finn. Another world. Another quiet universe where the Mushroom War plays out differently, or doesn't ignite at all, or fizzles into some strange alternate history that still has its own griefs and joys. The original farm world doesn't vanish. It continues, haunted by the Lich's near victory, while beside it, like a reflection in a slightly warped mirror, a new path opens. Pattern interrupt. At this point, Prismo is basically running a cosmic tab. Every wish that tries to fix everything doesn't close a line of reality, it opens another one. His wall of screens gets busier. Multiple Finns now exist across the multiverse, each carrying different memories, different scars, all technically the same person for the purposes of wish accounting. We're going to come back to that accounting later when we talk about Prismo's rules as a kind of metaphysical bureaucracy. For now, you can just imagine him in his 80s bachelor pad at the center of time, lounging on a beanbag, quietly tracking a web of branching outcomes that all started because a boy looked at the worst version of his world and tried earnestly to make it so that horror had never been born. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the wish is kind, the wish is heroic, and the wish makes everything much more complicated. Prismo's death. When the dreamer wakes up, so when Finn makes that impossible, heroic wish, when farm world blossoms and fractures out at the center of time, there is a quiet consequence waiting off to the side, like a shadow behind the TV. The Lich's trajectory bends, the universe rearranges itself, and somewhere very small and very human, an old man's eyelids tremble. Let's start with the image the show actually gives you. The time room is buzzing, screens alive with branching timelines, Prismo doing his laid-back cosmic DJ routine. The Lich has just used his wish for extinction, Finn has countered with his own desperate desire, and reality is doing gymnastics. And then, very simply, in another timeline, in another room, the Lich's interference leads to the old man's magical protection failing. His body jerks, his eyes open. A dream ends. Here is the thing. For Prismo, death is not a scythe, it's a blink. One frame he's there, stretched out like a pink neon puddle on his beanbag, making dry comments about the multiverse. The next frame, he is gone. No scream. No beam of light, just a hard cut. The TV keeps playing. The jar of pickles is still on the shelf. The snacks are perfectly arranged, untouched, like a shrine to a party that has been permanently postponed. The time room without Prismo is one of the eeriest images in the whole show. All that power, all those timelines, and absolutely no host. The center of time is suddenly an empty living room. The screens dim a little, like they're tired. The windows of reality still look out over the multiverse, but the colors feel colder, as if even existence itself is waiting for a voice that doesn't arrive. Think about that for a second. A cosmic control room reduced to the silence of someone's friend not being home, and then you have Finn and Jake standing in that silence. Finn is confused, trying to map cause and effect, trying to understand how a wish could erase a person made of pure reality. Jake doesn't need the explanation. He just knows his buddy is gone. This is the guy who watched movies with him, who made him sandwiches, who treated him like more than a stretchy dog from a small timeline. Jake's grief snaps Prismo's existence into focus. He isn't just a wish engine, he's a person Jake loves. We're going to linger on the mechanics for a moment, because they're strangely tender. Prismo is literally the dream of that old man. No metaphor, no allegory, a direct pipeline from one sleeper's brain into a cosmic being at the center of time. When the old man wakes, the dream stops rendering. The death is just an interruption in the process, but the rules say it can only be reversed if the old man goes back to sleep in exactly the right way, under exactly the right conditions. So even here, in Annihilation, Prismo is bound by procedure. He cannot claw his way back. He cannot wish himself awake as a different form of existence. Someone else has to navigate the rules, make the precise choices, and tuck the universe back into the shape where he can exist again. It is devastating. It is mundane. It is a god undone by something as ordinary as insomnia. And in that specifically Adventure Time way, the show lets you sit there with Finn and Jake, with the empty couch and the humming screens. It whispers that even cosmic wishmasters can vanish because a mortal body rolled over in bed. But it also leaves a door cracked, because if a dream can stop, a dream can start again, right? The question is, who will pay the price to turn the lights back on in the time room? And what that wish will cost them next? Rewriting the rules, wishes, loopholes, and cosmic bureaucracy. So when the lights go out in the time room, when the screens go dark and Prismo's couch is just an outline in your imagination, you're left with a question hanging in the quiet. What are the rules for turning all of this back on? Because here is the thing. For a show about magic and apocalypse, Adventure Time is surprisingly obsessed with paperwork. Let's start with the rules we've already seen, laid out softly across the multiverse like a user manual no one actually reads. One wish per person, per lifetime. Spoken clearly. No wishing for more wishes. Prismo has to take your words literally, and once a wish is granted, there are no direct take-backs. No undo button. Instead, reality branches. A new timeline buds off the center of time like a strange little fruit, carrying the consequences forward while the old one keeps existing on a different screen. Think about that for a second. The Lich wishes for all life to be extinct, so Prismo doesn't erase the universe we know. He routes that annihilation into Farm World, quarantining the disaster in its own branch of existence. Finn uses his wish to counter the Lich, but it doesn't overwrite the first desire, it just redirects it, like cosmic customer service rerouting a call. Jake wishes to live in a world where the Lich never existed, and that too becomes its own reality. No one gets deleted. They just slide sideways into different versions of time. This is where the edge cases start to feel like philosophy homework. Counter wishes don't cancel, they accumulate. Alternate timelines don't argue, they coexist. And when two wish makers have conflicting desires, Prismo doesn't choose a winner. He just opens another channel in the multiverse and lets both outcomes exist, tidy and separate, like labeled folders on an infinite desktop. He is not evil. He is not even indifferent. He is just bound by rules older than the universe itself. We're going to compare that to your classic genie or monkey's paw story for a minute, because the contrast is soothing. Traditional wish granters are tricksters. They twist language to punish desire, to make a moral point about greed or hubris. Prismo isn't doing that. He's more like a cosmic bureaucrat on a beanbag chair, a civil servant of reality who has to process whatever comes in according to policy. The monkey's paw wants you to suffer. Prismo just wants the form filled out correctly. And yet, he cares. You can hear it in the way he nudges Finn toward clearer wording, or side-eyes Jake's more self-destructive impulses. He'll suggest, he'll clarify, he'll stall with a movie night if he thinks you're about to break your own existence in half, but he won't override you. Power without veto. Empathy without control. There is sadness there, resignation, the quiet ache of someone who has watched too many wishes fail to fix the desire underneath. The pattern interrupt is this. For a universe born from a mushroom war and haunted by the Lich, the cosmic level is actually safe in a strange way. Not safe from pain, or loss, or bad choices. Safe from pure chaos. Even at the center of time, there are rules, procedures, constraints. Prismo can't unmake everything on a whim. No one can. And as you drift with him through those humming timelines, it's like listening to a bedtime story where the cosmos itself is saying, yes, it's wild out there, but it's not random. And from that rule-bound time room, we can drift back down, gently, to a different kind of order, the slow, fragile rebuilding of the world after the Mushroom War, where wishes are replaced by choices, and reality is stitched together one small act at a time. Back on the ground, Finn, bubblegum, and growing up. So when we drift back down, we don't land in an explosion or a prophecy. We land in a treehouse, a boy, a dog, and a princess who keeps needing to be saved, or at least that's how he tells himself the story at first. Let's start with that very simple version. Early on, Finn's crush on Princess Bubblegum is almost medieval in its clarity. He is the brave hero, she is the radiant ruler. The universe is a neat little quest board arranged around his desire to protect her. He writes songs, he blushes, he throws himself at danger with that full-body sincerity only a 13-year-old adventurer can generate. It's adorable. It's earnest. It's also, quietly, a fantasy about how reality should work. Here is the thing. Bubblegum never actually fits into that fantasy. Even when Finn is swooning, the show keeps slipping in details that don't quite match the hero-princess script. She's running a whole kingdom. She's doing late-night experiments with dubious ethics. She is older than him in a way that isn't just about years. She has seen governments collapse, watched can-be citizens melt and be rebuilt, made choices that bend morality for the sake of stability. Think about that for a second. To Finn, she is a crush. To herself, she is a head of state. We're going to watch that gap widen as time moves on. You see it in moments like Too Young, where Bubblegum is de-aged and suddenly closer to Finn's age, giggling and reckless and briefly willing to kiss the hero who saves her. For a heartbeat, his fantasy is real. But as soon as she reclaims her 18-year-old body and her full political power, she steps back from him, and the door quietly closes. Not cruelly, just inevitably. Later, in episodes like Goliad or The Cooler, Finn glimpses the deeper machinery. He sees Bubblegum grow a psychic child weapon to protect the Candy Kingdom. He sees her surveilling her own citizens, making preemptive strikes, keeping secrets even from Jake. She is not evil. She is not even indifferent. She is just bound by rules older than him. The brutal calculus of leadership in a fragile post-war reality. And this is where Finn starts to understand that Bubblegum is not a prize to be won, but a person whose priorities won't always line up with his wishes. His heartbreak isn't just romantic, it's epistemological. The universe is not organized around his feelings. People he loves can choose duty over him, security over transparency, power over warmth. Somewhere in the time room at the center of time, Prismo is watching this play out on one of his infinite screens. He has literally seen Finn try to use a wish to fix his life, to rewrite a timeline into something cleaner, simpler, more heroic. But you can't wish someone into being the version of themselves that lives in your head. Not Bubblegum, not Jake, not even yourself. In that specifically Adventure Time way, Finn's crush arc becomes a quiet training montage in emotional realism. A boy learns that love is not ownership, that power carries lonely compromises, and that growing up means letting other people be complicated. And as he lets go of the Princess in a Tower story, the multiverse is already preparing to show him something much stranger than heartbreak. What happens when you actually get the wish that remakes your entire world? Flame Princess, heartbreak, and emotional consequences. So when Finn finally steps away from the Princess in a Tower story, the universe does something very in that specifically Adventure Time way. It hands him a princess who is not a tower at all, but a volcano walking around in a dress. Flame Princess is not a metaphor. She is literal fire given consciousness. A royal being whose emotions don't just feel like they could burn the world, they actually can. Let's start with how precarious that is. In Oo's elemental balance, fire is one of the old powers, as ancient as ice and candy, and Flame Princess is its crown. Her anger can melt dungeons. Her heartbreak can crack the ground. Her laughter heats the air. Imagine dating a person where a bad breakup is not just "we don't talk anymore," but there might be a new lava trench on the geopolitical map. Think about that for a second. Finn, being a 13-year-old in a universe that already trained him on cosmic wishes and apocalyptic liches, runs straight toward this. Of course he does. Here is the thing. His connection with Flame Princess is intense and sincere. He is fascinated by her power, charmed by her weirdness, and genuinely cares in that stumbling, overeager way where you want to do everything right and accidentally do 3 wrong things at once. He wants to understand her. He also wants to test reality. That's how you get the dungeon incident. Finn, curious and still high on the idea that clever plans can solve any problem, designs a dungeon to prove Flame Princess's strength, to study her like she's an elemental puzzle instead of a person. It's not evil. It's not even indifferent. It is just a boy treating love like a combat scenario with rules and checkpoints. And when she realizes she's been maneuvered, the emotional blast radius is enormous. The breakup that follows is not tidy. Flame Princess feels used, reduced to her destructive power, denied the simple wish to be trusted. Finn feels devastated, but also confused, because in his mind, his intentions were good. He wanted to help her level up. To him, this was a grand romantic gesture wrapped in dungeon design. To her, it's betrayal. The universe does not grade on intention curves, it responds to actions. So Finn has to sit with that. We're going to watch him learn that good intentions are not a shield against consequence, any more than a magic crown is a shield against madness. You can love someone and still hurt them. You can want the best and still trigger the worst. In a world where wishes reshape timelines and a single sentence in the time room can fracture existence, the show quietly insists on this smaller, sharper rule. Your choices matter even when your heart is in the right place. As Finn absorbs this, itself is shifting. Conflicts that once exploded into pure chaos begin resolving into uneasy treaties, fragile truces between kingdoms, a slow drift towards something like peace. The boy hero is maturing, and the world is maturing with him, as if the multiverse is gently rewarding emotional responsibility with a slightly less apocalyptic weather report. But just as Finn is learning to live with the consequences of what he's done to one girl's heart, time is already curling around a different kind of consequence entirely. Not a breakup, not a dungeon, but a wish that will drag him out of his own timeline and show him what his life looks like when the universe answers a question he never meant to ask. Cosmic Jake, reincarnation, shapeshifters, and the big picture and the universe answers that question not with a speech, but with a dog. Or at least, with someone who looks like a dog, naps like a dog, plays viola like a dog, and quietly bends reality like warm taffy every time he stretches an arm across the room for a sandwich. Here is the thing. Jake is not a random magical pet who wandered in from the background radiation of OO. He is one stop on a very long, very strange reincarnation timeline, a wheel of existence that keeps turning through different bodies and different eras. Before Finn has his questions, there was Shoko, the one-armed thief in a ruined candy kingdom. Before Shoko, there are other hinted lives, other silhouettes of the same soul flickering through time, always orbiting the same general desire: protect this boy. Tilt the universe a little closer to balance, then move on. Let's start with the moment his powers are seeded. Joshua, Jake's dad, in an earlier, rougher fights a shape-shifting creature that bleeds cosmic biology instead of normal blood. It bites him, he wounds it. Reality gets weird. Later, Joshua finds a lump on his head, cuts it open, and out slides a tiny yellow puppy, already stretching and warping space like it's the most natural thing in the world. This is not normal genetics. This is the multiverse leaving a sticky note in the form of a dog. We're going to sit with that for a second. A reincarnating soul that once crawled through dungeons as Shoko, now literally grown from a wound inflicted by a shapeshifter that should not exist in a sane universe. Think about that for a second. Jake's body is a compromise between dog, demon, and something older that remembers being human and dying alone under the Candy Kingdom, watching a tower collapse in slow motion. And yet, when you meet him, he is relaxed. He is not a prophet. He is not a monk. He is a guy who wants to make breakfast, play viola, and maybe save the world in between naps. That is the paradox at the heart of Jake. He is simultaneously cosmic and domestic, a reincarnated guardian wrapped in the energy of a middle-aged jazz uncle. His chill isn't laziness. It feels like the calm of a soul that has already clung too tightly in other lives and learned, painfully, to let time flow how it wants. The show keeps dropping hints that the universe has a bigger role in mind for him. His dream conversations with Prismo at the center of time. His strange ease with the cosmic owl. The way he treats the multiverse like a slightly confusing hallway rather than an abyss. He is not shocked by power. He just respects the rules. And when Jake finally dies, much later, the series treats it not as a rupture in reality, but as a gentle pivot. He goes, he glows, he moves on, less an ending, more a door. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the wheel turns again, and the same soul that once stretched across dungeons will stretch across whatever comes next, while Finn and you learn to rest in the idea that in this universe, goodbyes are rarely absolute. Somewhere beyond that door, another lifetime is already waiting. The Lich returns, threads of annihilation through time somewhere. Beyond that door, another lifetime is already waiting. But as the wheel turns and souls recycle and quiet futures bloom, there is one presence that does not move on, does not glow, does not soften. It lingers like radiation after a forgotten war, the Lich. Here is the thing about the Lich. You can follow Finn and Jake through their whole timeline. You can watch Candy Kingdoms rise and old crowns crack, and he will keep showing up like a bad signal bleeding through every channel of the multiverse. Not as a guy with a tragic backstory, not as a villain you can reason with, as a pressure, as a direction towards zero. Let's start with him as we first really understand him. In the Shattered Age after the Mushroom War, a skeleton wrapped in a cloak, voice dragging across reality, whispering extinction into whoever will listen. He doesn't negotiate. He doesn't gloat. He just moves. Through Billy's legend, through snail possession, through that horrible quiet moment when he stands in Prismo's time room and uses a cosmic wish to try to erase life across every timeline at once. Think about that for a second. Not conquer, not rule, not win. Just remove. When that wish is redirected into Farm World, he doesn't stop. He infects that reality, rides the cracks in time, turns alternate history into another petri dish for annihilation. Later, when he's reduced to a baby and carried like hazardous hope in Princess Bubblegum's arms, he's still there. Not gone. Contained, diluted into Sweet Pea, who has to spend his own small, gentle life wrestling with a voice that wants nothing but the end of all existence. The Lich is not a character. He is entropy wearing a skull. And Finn and Jake, they never really defeat him. They delay him, they redirect him, they tackle him into portals, slam doors on his fingers, trick his wish through Prismo's rules, pour his essence into new containers. Statement: they win. Repetition with variation. They win by stalling, by sealing, by transforming. Their power is not annihilation of annihilation. Their power is sandbagging the flood. We're going to see this pattern again and again if you watch the timeline as one long, slow breath. The Lich escapes comets, cracks prisons, rides possession, survives as an idea in Sweet Pea's nightmares, and in the distant, far future echoes of universes that barely remember Ooh. Even when he is quiet, the possibility of him exists, like a dormant spell at the center of time, waiting for the wrong wish, the wrong moment, the wrong crack in reality. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the universe never promises you that pure destruction can be erased, only that it can be held in tension with life, with love, with stubborn, slightly ridiculous heroism. Somewhere beyond Finn's last adventure, in glass cities and overgrown forests, someone will still be balancing against that same cold desire for nothingness. And in the next section, we'll drift even further forward into futures where Ooh is a memory, but the rhythm of endings and beginnings keeps quietly repeating. Betty's sacrifice, love, madness, and gold. And while those future heroes are balancing against the Lich's cold desire for nothingness, somewhere else in the multiverse, a different kind of force is burning itself out. Not a skeleton in a robe, not a wish for extinction. Just a woman on a bus, a ring in her pocket, a book in her hands, and a universe about to quietly rearrange around a single impossible desire. Let's start with Betty, as she really is, before the crown, before the cosmic chaos. She's a concerned fiancée, brilliant and grounded, watching Simon Petrikov slowly slide away from her under the weight of an artifact he doesn't understand. No magic, no center of time, just missed calls, worried eyes, and that sharp, practical love that tries to fix reality with research and emotional honesty. In another timeline, that would have been enough. In this one, it isn't. Here is the thing about love in Adventure Time. It does not stay small. It escalates. It mutates. It breaks the rules of time just to see if it can. When Betty follows Simon through the portal in Betty, she doesn't arrive as a passive observer. She immediately starts rewriting existence, using wizards, artifacts, and raw willpower to try to pull him back from the crown's influence. Each intervention works a little. Each intervention costs a lot. And with every spell, every bargain, you can feel her own stability fraying in parallel to Simon's earlier descent. He lost himself to ice and memory. She begins to lose herself to possibility, to the idea that if she just finds the right wish, the right moment, the right timeline to nudge, she can have Simon back the way he was. Think about that for a second. Simon's tragedy is being trapped in one identity he never wanted, while Betty's tragedy is dissolving her identity piece by piece in the name of getting him free. By the time we reach the climax, she has already crossed into that strange thin air where love, obsession, and cosmic power blur together. Gold arrives over Ooh like a red howling absence, a hole in reality shaped like a god. His presence isn't fire or lightning, it's cancellation. And Betty makes the most Adventure Time move possible. She hijacks the purest chaos in the universe and uses it as a delivery system for devotion. She fuses with Golb, not metaphorically. Her body, her mind, her entire being folds into that impossible geometry. And for one suspended moment, she is both Betty and something vaster, rewriting the crown's connection, pushing Simon back into humanity and gently exiling herself into cosmic unknowability. He wakes up. She doesn't. It works. It absolutely works. And it absolutely destroys her in that quiet, bittersweet way where you get exactly what you asked for and lose everything you didn't realize you were wagering. We're going to call it a happy ending because Simon is free and walking under real sunlight again. But it's the kind of happiness that tastes like static if you think about it too long. From Prismo's vantage point, somewhere in his cozy prison at the center of time, Betty's sacrifice is one flare among many. A bright, desperate spike on an infinite wall of timelines, no louder than a candle against a galaxy, but no less real. He has seen wishes like this before. He will see them again. Love reaching so far, it becomes dangerous. Care expanding until it turns cosmic and slightly absurd, like trying to hug a black hole into behaving. And here is where it gets interesting, because Betty isn't exactly gone, not in the usual sense. Golb changes, calms, reorients. Her desire is now woven into a being that existed before language, which means somewhere out there is a universe where the raw engine of annihilation now carries a faint, stubborn echo of a woman who just wanted her fiancé back. That is not nothing. That is not safe either. So as you imagine Prismo watching that flare fade on his screens, beanbag rustling, pickle jar glowing faintly in the corner, you can almost feel him filing Betty's choice next to 1,000 other impossible bargains. Another reminder that the multiverse runs on more than power and rules. It runs on people who are willing to throw themselves into the gears. And in the next part of this story, as time drifts even further past Finn and Jake, we'll see what happens when Ooh itself begins to live with the consequences of sacrifices like hers, and with a future where even the gods are carrying someone's unfinished wish inside them. Islands and humans. Finn finds his people, and while the gods and wishmasters are busy carrying around other people's unfinished desires, somewhere much smaller, much quieter, one boy is still carrying around a question. What if I really am the last human in the universe? Finn grows up with that belief pressed into him like a fossil. He jokes, he quests, he yells about justice, but underneath all of that noise there's this gentle, constant ache, the way you might feel if you were the only waking person left in a sleeping world. He looks at Ooh's candy people and vampires and talking clouds, and most nights there's a tiny pause where you can feel him thinking, where is everyone like me? Here is the thing, Ooh does love him back. Jake, Bubblegum, Marceline, all of them wrap around his existence like a makeshift constellation, a chosen family orbiting a kid who believes his species is already a closed timeline. Think about that for a second. Every birthday, every dungeon crawl, every quiet moment with the stars, there's this invisible frame around it. The last human doing his best. And then a boat appears on the horizon of his life. A signal, a song from far away. We're going to skip through the logistics and just sit with the image, Finn on the deck of a ship bound for the islands, watching Ooh shrink behind him as the ocean widens ahead, like reality itself is taking a long breath. The journey feels almost mythic, like sailing off the edge of the map and finding out the map was lying. When he reaches the human islands, the paradox hits. Humans survived. Not extinct, not erased from existence. They've built shining platforms and careful cities, with drones in the sky and gentle, omnipresent surveillance humming in the background. Technologically advanced, yes. Emotionally buffered. Safety as a system. Freedom as a variable they've quietly minimized. At the center of that system is Minerva, Finn's mother, now an uploaded guardian intelligence that watches over every human life like a digital ocean. She is not evil, she is not even indifferent. She is just bound by rules older than any individual person there. Safety protocols turned into a philosophy. To her, the outside world is pure risk, pure chaos, an ooh-shaped hazard. Let's start with the temptation. A home where everyone looks like him, where he has a mum who remembers his baby face, where nothing ever really goes wrong because the system won't allow it. That is a powerful wish, especially for someone who has walked through so much danger. But there is a cost. No real adventure, no Jake, no messy, unpredictable universe. So Finn does something quietly enormous. He walks away. He chooses Wu again, choosing the family he found over the species he was born into, deciding that belonging is not a biological contract, but an ongoing decision. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the show tells you that love can be as real in a treehouse with a magic dog as it is in a perfectly safe human city. And when he sails back, he isn't the last human anymore. He's just Finn. Human, yes, but also hero, brother, son of a digital guardian, friend of Candy royalty, ex-resident of a secret island utopia. The loneliness doesn't evaporate, but it changes texture. It becomes memory instead of identity. That new piece settles into him like the tide coming in, quietly recoloring the later, softer years of his life, and setting the stage for a future where Wu and its humans are no longer rumors to each other, but neighbors sharing the same long, slow evening of time. The elementals awaken. Wu almost resets that long, slow evening of time doesn't stay quiet forever. Just when Wu feels like it might finally be settling into a gentle twilight, humans on islands, kingdoms in uneasy peace, something deep in the code of reality wakes up and starts trying to reinstall an older version of the universe. Here is the thing. The elementals were here before almost everything you've met. Candy, fire, slime and ice aren't just aesthetics or kingdoms. They're primordial drivers, like 4 default settings the world keeps trying to snap back to. Imagine existence as a cosmic operating system, and somewhere in the background, an ancient process suddenly boots up and says, "Oh, you've installed chaos and nuance? That's cute." Rolling back to factory settings now, let's start with how quietly personal that rollback looks. Princess Bubblegum, who you've mostly known as a hyper-competent candy scientist, is revealed as the Candy Elemental, the universe's urge towards sweetness, safety, and soft control. Flame Princess isn't just a hot-headed monarch, she's fire itself, pure destructive power and passion and revolution. Slime Princess, who always felt like a joke on the edge of the frame, turns out to be slime made manifest, the impulse toward entropy, goo, and constant formless change. And Patience Saint, Pim, the ice elemental from before the Mushroom War, wakes up like a glitch from a previous timeline, cold, detached, and convinced she knows how the world should look. Each of them starts pulling. Not metaphorically, physically, Wu begins to reconfigure into 4 monolithic domains, each one an exaggerated wish granted at global scale. Entire landscapes become candy, soft and pastel and suffocatingly safe. Fire spreads into a blazing volcanic empire where only the strong or the heat-proof can exist. Slime floods and dissolves boundaries, turning cities into bubbling, sentient goo. Ice creeps and crystallizes, freezing time and emotion into a static, glittering stillness. Think about that for a second. A world where every compromise, every grey area is literally being overwritten by one emotion turned up to maximum. We're going to follow Finn, Jake, and their friends as they walk through this almost reset reality and make a very Adventure Time choice. They don't destroy the elementals. They don't erase those cosmic desires from the universe. Instead, they negotiate, they improvise, they mess up, and they keep insisting that Wu is better as a messy composite than as a perfect singular domain. Finn sides with Flame Princess without wanting a world of only fire. He loves PB without wanting an all-candy existence. Even ice, after everything Simon and the Crown have put the world through, isn't something they want gone forever. And that is the quiet thesis of this arc. Order without freedom becomes candy tyranny. Freedom without care becomes fire devastation. Change without structure melts into slime chaos. Stillness without warmth freezes into ice isolation. Wu survives because it refuses to pick just one. In that specifically Adventure Time way, The elemental crisis turns into a bedtime parable about living between extremes, about a universe that is always negotiating between safety and danger, order and wildness, love and the power to let go. When the elementals finally calm and the world unfreezes from its near reset, Oo doesn't go back to what it was. It goes forward into something slightly stranger, slightly wiser. And that subtle shift quietly prepares everyone for the next, deeper unraveling of magic itself. Come along with me, the last war and a gentle ending. So the world unfreezes, the elements settle, and for a breath it feels like Oo might finally coast. But here is the thing. In this universe, peace is never just the absence of war. It's a negotiation with every old wound that never really healed. And right on cue, one of Bubblegum's oldest mistakes walks back onto the board. Gumball doesn't arrive as a mustache-twirling villain. He arrives as history, as that first failed attempt at family and nation building that she literally poured into a bucket and reset. The Gum War is not just candy versus candy, it's control versus trust, fear versus forgiveness, an entire timeline arguing with itself about whether people can be allowed to change. Bubblegum builds armies and mechs and diplomatic back channels. Gumball builds his own twisted reflection of her power. It's a civil war made of frosting and generational trauma. On the battlefield, everything feels very grounded, very mortal. Marching soldiers, nervous speeches, Marceline trying to keep Bubblegum from burning herself out completely. And then reality tears sideways and Golb arrives like a cosmic error message written in teeth and static. The war, which was already too big, suddenly becomes microscopic. Just one more argument happening on the lip of a black hole that could eat the multiverse. Think about that for a second. You go from petty family drama to the raw unmaking power at the center of time and entropy in that specifically Adventure Time way that never warns you before it gets cosmic. Gold doesn't attack like a monster. He erases. His presence bends music into dissonance, bodies into chimera, memories into sludge. Finn and Jake fight in the way they always have. Fists, heart, improvised plans that should not work but somehow do. But the real counterspell here is emotional. Bubblegum and Marceline stop being generals and start being people, literally shielding each other, saying the quiet love out loud instead of just orbiting it. We're going to call that what it is. The show cashing in a decade of subtext as a stabilizing force in the fabric of existence. Simon is swallowed into the chaos, and somehow that is what saves him. Betty, who has rewritten reality with every wish she could reach, finally uses Golb's power as a kind of brutal cosmic compromise. She merges with him, redirects him, becomes his guiding glitch, and in that sacrifice, Simon is restored. No crown, no Ice King, just a tired human man standing in the rubble of his own legend. And around them, everyone sings, literally. Come Along With Me becomes a spell, a communal wish hummed into the teeth of annihilation. It is not a clean victory. Golb isn't slain, he is steered. The Gum War doesn't end in domination. It dissolves into amnesty, awkward apologies, and the quiet decision to keep living together in all their flawed, weird complexity. Not order, not chaos, just coexistence. After the last shot, time does not stop. The grass regrows over old craters. New heroes slide into the spaces Finn and Jake once filled. And somewhere at the center of time, Prismo watches those future timelines spool out on his wall of screens, like a bedtime story he's telling himself. Because the gentle secret of this ending is that it isn't an ending at all. It's the moment the camera pulls back, and the next timeline he focuses on? That's where things get even stranger. Far futures, Shermie, Beth, and the echo of a sword. The next timeline he focuses on isn't bright and candy-colored. It's pale and wide and a little bit empty, like someone took ooh and stretched it out over a much bigger canvas. You're still in the same universe, technically, but the shapes have shifted. The hills are taller, the ruins are older, and the heroes have different names. Let's start with two silhouettes against that washed-out sky, Shermie and Beth. To them, this isn't a post-apocalypse. It's just home. Crumbled towers are playgrounds. Broken robot torsos are convenient benches. The quiet bones of old kingdoms are just part of the normal background of existence. The way trees and clouds are for you, they hop across cracked statues and half-submerged relics without reverence, because you can't miss a past you never personally met. Here is the thing. The show doesn't announce, with trumpets, that we've jumped centuries ahead. It just lets you notice. The Candy Kingdom is gone or transformed beyond easy recognition. The grasslands have warped into these long, soft mesas. Creatures that would have been monsters in Finn's time now just wander through the frame like slightly inconvenient neighbors. You feel the weight of time not as exposition, but as erosion. Names have faded, shapes remain. Shermie and Beth move through that landscape with the same casual, chaotic grace that Finn and Jake once had. They tease each other. They chase rumors. They look for treasure not because of some grand cosmic prophecy, but because it seems fun this afternoon. We're going to watch them poke at the ruins of an age that to us is still emotionally warm, and to them is just geology with better architecture. Think about that for a second. To you, Finn is recent. To them, he's sediment. And then they find the sword, not in a beam of heavenly light, not guarded by a cosmic dragon at the center of time, just wedged in stone, half forgotten, like the universe absent-mindedly left its keys on the counter. The Finn sword, battered, legendary, and also just a surprisingly well-balanced tool, slides into Shermie's hands. He swings it, clumsy and delighted. Beth laughs. They know it's important, but they don't know why in the way you do. That is the quiet confirmation that Finn and Jake's age has passed fully into legend. Their adventures have compressed into symbols. A sword, a ruined treehouse, a distant song about a stretchy dog. Power becomes relic. Relic becomes rumor. Rumor becomes playground dare. And yet, the energy is the same. A boy and his companion, on a hill, daring the world to be boring and losing that dare every single time. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the geography itself tells you what happened without spelling out the rules. You can feel that there were more wars, more healing. Elemental powers flared and cooled. Kingdoms fused, fell, regrew as something stranger and gentler. The multiverse kept humming along, but this particular timeline settled into a quieter rhythm where the loudest sound is wind moving through abandoned architecture. And somewhere in that wind, there's an echo, because this is the pattern. New kids, same desire. New landscape, same wish to see what's over the next ridge. Even when the original characters have left the stage, their outlines remain in the way future heroes stand, joke and leap into danger. Stories don't stop, they just reincarnate as different people with similar hearts. So as Shermie hefts that sword and Beth looks out over the altered horizon, you are watching continuity made visible. You're seeing how a single lifetime ripples forward across centuries until it becomes a gentle nudge in someone else's afternoon adventure. And if this is what the far future of Ooh looks like, you might wonder, how far does that echo travel? Because the next place the camera drifts is even farther out, where the idea of Ooh itself begins to dissolve into something much larger. Distant lands, epilogues for old friends out here, where Ooh blurs out into pure possibility. The universe does something gentle, it starts giving you epilogues. Not big, canon-shattering revelations, just quiet addendums, like the dream you have after you thought you'd already woken up. And in that specifically Adventure Time way, those dreams still matter. Let's start with BMO, drifting through space in a tiny ship, a small console with a huge capacity for joy. BMO in Distant Lands is technically a prequel set long before Finn and Jake's main timeline, but it feels like a thesis statement for the whole universe. Even a cheerful little robot, singing to potatoes and making up cowboy names, can accidentally steer the fate of colonies and cosmic ecosystems. BMO isn't a chosen one. BMO is just BMO. Think about that for a second. In a multiverse full of raw power and reality-warping magic, the universe still bends around kindness, play, and a weirdly specific desire to make friends with everyone. Then time jumps forward, and Obsidian opens a different door into a quieter, more human kind of volcano. We see Marceline and Bubblegum not as mythic figures frozen in a single era, but as people who have had centuries to accumulate resentment, misunderstandings, and unspoken apologies. The Glass Kingdom, the Old Dragon, the songs, those are just the stage. The real story is two immortals finally doing the slow, boring, miraculous work of healing. Here is the thing. The show does not treat their relationship as a reward you unlock at the end of the game. It treats it as ongoing maintenance on a shared existence. They revisit old trauma, they argue, they protect each other, and they choose again to stay. That is its own kind of wish, granted over and over by time. We're going to move even farther along the timeline to Together Again, which looks like an ending but plays more like a lullaby about death. Finn grows old. Jake is gone. Reality as we know it has technically wrapped. And then the episode just follows Finn across the afterlife, across planes of existence that feel like someone stacked every metaphysical rulebook in the universe and used it as a stepping stool. He finds Jake, of course he does. Their reunion is small and goofy and profound all at once. The message isn't that death has no power, it's that their bond is bigger than any single lifetime's rules. Finally, Wizard City dips back down from the cosmic into the mildly ridiculous, with Peppermint Butler attending wizard school like a cursed Harry Potter mint. It's a coda for the magical underbelly of Ooh, spell duels in dingy classrooms, conspiracies in the hallways, the lingering shadow of Peppermint Butler's darker past. He is not evil, he is not even indifferent. He is just a polite candy servant who also happens to know how to bargain with demons, trying to live within a new identity while the universe keeps remembering who he was. All of these Distant Lands stories work as soft epilogues. You do not need them to understand the main arc of Ooh, the center of time, or Finn and Jake's wish-shaped journey, but they fill in the negative space around the core timeline, like sketches drawn in the margins of a finished painting. They reassure you that after the last episode fades, existence keeps unfolding. Robots keep drifting through space, lovers keep talking it out, best friends keep finding each other, and wizards keep being extremely irresponsible with reality. And as you drift with them, the next question quietly appears. If these are just the epilogues, what does the true end of the story feel like when the universe finally actually lets go? Prismo between channels, watching every era of Ooh, and somewhere outside all those epilogues you just drifted through, the channel quietly clicks back to the beginning. The light in the time room goes a little softer. The screens rearrange themselves like a lazy constellation, and Prismo is there on his cosmic couch, sprawled out with one arm behind his head, remote floating in midair. To him, the entire history of Ooh is just on demand. Let's start with the pre-war world, glowing on one window, highways, office buildings, the slow sleepwalk of a civilization that has no idea it's living in its own flashback. Prismo watches people in suits hurry through rain, a kid in a hoodie feeding birds, Simon browsing for strange artifacts. He leans in, amused, the way you watch an old home video when no one knows what's coming. Here is the thing, he knows exactly where this timeline is headed, and he still can't look away. He flips the channel and the mushroom war doesn't roar, it shimmers. Distant flashes on the horizon, mushroom clouds blooming in slow motion like terrible fireworks, seen through a soundproof window. From the center of time, the apocalypse is almost quiet. He sees the Lich's influence thread into existence, sees Simon put on the crown and walk into the snow. His eyes crinkle at Simon's dorky little jokes, and then, when Marceline appears, tiny and scared, he actually wipes at the corner of his eye. Not because he can change it, because he can't. Think about that for a second. Infinite power over reality. And he still can't step into the frame. He is not evil. He is not even indifferent. He is just bound by rules older than the multiverse itself. He can grant a wish that tilts a timeline, but he cannot reach down and hold Marceline's hand, cannot take the crown off Simon's head, cannot walk out of this room and stand in the snow with them. So he does the only thing he can do. He keeps watching with him into the age of Ooh, where the screens fill with candy kingdoms, vampires, wizards setting themselves on fire for science. He laughs out loud at early Finn and Jake, at the way Finn trips over his own sword, at Jake's absolutely irresponsible use of shape-shifting as a lifestyle. The big battles are fun, but they're not his favorites. What he replays are the quiet episodes. Finn and Jake cooking breakfast in that tiny treehouse kitchen. Princess Bubblegum and Marceline sharing a song on the balcony while the universe hums in the background. A hug after a fight that went too far. A shared meal after a war that almost happened. Those are the moments where existence feels less like a timeline and more like a living room. And yes, sometimes one of those windows shows himself, his own death, his return. The moment the old man wakes and the dream collapses, and the moment someone wishes him back into reality, there is a little flinch there, recognition, the knowledge that even he is just another episode. You can imagine sitting beside him now, sinking into that impossible couch, watching pre-war Earth, the Mushroom War, Finn's whole life, and the far future flicker by like a long, strange movie marathon. Outside the time room, universes rise and fall. Inside, it is just you, Prismo, and the glow of the screens. And as the remote hovers over one last unwatched channel, over the true end of the story, he hesitates and smiles. Because the final episode of a universe is never quite what you expect, is it? Loneliness in the time room. A god who just wants company, he doesn't press play on that last channel. Not yet. Instead, Prismo leans back into the beanbag, the glow from 1,000 paused timelines painting gentle shadows on the walls. And you can feel it. The way silence in the time room isn't empty. It's crowded, with memories, with reruns. Here is the thing. When no one is visiting, this is most of his existence. He rewinds his favorite moments like you rewatch a comfort show at 2 a.m. Jake's first wish. Finn's dorky little smile the first time he realizes this cosmic flat pink guy is actually his friend. Simon quietly asking for something we never fully hear. He scrolls through the multiverse the way someone scrolls through their phone, not because there's anything new, but because the motion itself is soothing. Think about that for a second. A being who can see every universe, every timeline, using that impossible power to rewatch his own best hangouts. He makes snacks. Of course he does. Tiny pickles, weird cosmic nachos, drinks that look like liquid static and taste like whatever you're nostalgic for. He talks to himself, running commentary on scenes he's already seen 1 billion times. He laughs at his own jokes. He practices new ones for when someone eventually shows up. There is comedy there, and also a quiet, aching rehearsal of companionship. Because despite being at the literal center of time, Prismo does not have many friends. Not really. There's Jake, who gets him, Finn, who tries, a few cosmic entities who drop by between apocalypses, like co-workers stopping at the break room coffee machine. They talk about rules, about wishes, about the latest universe that imploded. Then they leave. He stays. The time room is a cosmic bachelor pad, but it is also a waiting room that never closes, and we're going to sit with the paradox again. Prismo can alter reality with a sentence. He can fold a timeline into a wish and spin a new universe out of someone's desire. He is not weak. He is not helpless. He is just bound by a stranger dependence. He cannot make the old man dream forever, cannot reach out of his own ontology and shake the shoulder of the sleeper who is his entire existence. He cannot force anyone to stay 5 minutes longer than they want to. Let's start from a different angle for a moment. Imagine being small instead, finite. One body, one lifetime, one little room where you're listening to this. You cannot see the multiverse, but you can text a friend. You cannot warp a timeline, but you can leave your house, change your job, decide to sleep. Is that less power or a different kind of freedom? If you could trade places with Prismo, would you? In that specifically Adventure Time way, the show hides this very human question inside a glowing pink god. Is it better to be vast and lonely outside reality, or limited and connected inside it? The late-night isolation you feel, lying awake and scrolling, is not that far from his. You replay old conversations instead of old universes. You wish, quietly, for someone to message you, the way he wishes for the soft ding of the time room door. And somewhere, as another universe loops back to its opening shot, Prismo laughs at a joke only he hears, adjusts the remote, and waits for the next visitor to break the silence. What Adventure Time is really about when you zoom all the way out. Here is the thing. If you pull the camera all the way back from that quiet time room, from Prismo with his remote and his pickle jar, you start to see the same pattern repeating across the entire Adventure Time timeline. Power pressed up against vulnerability, immortality bumping into change, safety arguing with freedom in a voice that sounds a lot like yours. Let's start with Finn, because he is the easiest to see and the hardest to stay as. A mortal kid in the universe of gods and elementals, constantly throwing his tiny breakable body at cosmic problems. He has almost no power, not really, but he keeps choosing the risky, compassionate option. He saves the world, loses an arm, loses relationships, loses the certainty that heroes are always right, and still walks forward. Finn is the answer that says, you let time change you, and you keep loving anyway. Jake stands next to him, a shapeshifter who could be anything, who could dodge every consequence, and mostly chooses to be a dad, a brother, a guy on the couch. Immense power, domesticated into chill. Think about that for a second. In a multiverse of apocalypses, one of the strongest beings spends a lot of his existence making breakfast and terrible puns. That is a response to the universe too. Princess Bubblegum grabs the other side of the spectrum. She takes fear and responsibility and alchemizes them into control. Candy citizens engineered for safety. Contingency plans. Secret dungeons. She reaches for order so hard she almost becomes the Lich's mirror, because absolute order and absolute annihilation both erase messy, unpredictable people. Marceline, who has watched empires fall, leans away from that. She hoards songs and memories instead of kingdoms, a vampire who finally decides that connection is better than conquest. Simon and Betty are the slow-motion tragedy underneath it all. Simon clings to existence through the crown and loses himself. Betty throws herself into time magic and finally Golb to save him. and dissolves into something unrecognizable. They both choose love over self, and the universe does not reward them cleanly. No neat bow, just a lingering sense that devotion is powerful and dangerous, and still, somehow, worth it. And then there is the lich, the purest version of one side of the argument. No compromise, no ambiguity, just the wish for silence where life used to be. He is not evil in a petty way. He is the gravitational pull towards zero. Prismo sits at the center of time, watching all of this. He can see every branch of every choice, every timeline where Finn quits, where bubblegum never softens, where the lich wins. He knows the rules, knows how fragile reality is, and still cares about tiny gestures, a bro hug, a movie night, a good sandwich. He is cosmic perspective without cynicism. In this video, we're going to say that is what Adventure Time is really about, learning to live inside impermanence and ambiguity without giving up on kindness. Not defeating chaos, not achieving perfect safety, but choosing again and again to be gentle in a universe that does not guarantee you anything. And here is the quiet twist. When you zoom out that far, your life starts to look like part of the same story. Your late night scrolling, your awkward conversations, your small stubborn hopes. No crowns, no wishmasters, just a person moving through time, making choices that only you can make. From the right angle, that is just as worthy of the center of time as any cosmic saga. We're going to keep zooming now into the next piece of the timeline, but you can drift if you need to. The universe will keep unfolding either way. Drifting off in ooh, letting the story keep going without you from the right angle, that is just as worthy of the center of time as any cosmic saga. We're going to keep zooming now into the next piece of the timeline, but you can drift if you need to. The universe will keep unfolding either way. So imagine, just for a moment, that we ease back into the time room. All those screens that were blazing with color and war and magic a second ago, they're still there, but Prismo is reaching out with that long, lazy arm, and almost absent-mindedly, he starts dimming them, one by one. A little less brightness on the mushroom war, a little less volume on Simon wandering through the snow, not gone, just turned down. Here is the thing. The center of time does not sleep, but it can whisper instead of shout. Reality doesn't need you to stare at every pixel of every timeline to keep existing. Finn and Jake are still somewhere in there, laughing on some rooftop, arguing about a sandwich, accidentally saving existence again because they went on a walk. Marceline is still strumming a bass in a ruined living room, singing to no one and everyone at once. Bubblegum is still in some lab, goggles on, doing one more ethically questionable experiment on candy molecules at 3 a.m. Think about that for a second. All of that continues whether your eyes are open or closed, whether you remember the exact sequence of events or not. The multiverse does not send you a quiz. You do not have to pass a law exam to be allowed to rest. In this video, we've been tracing wishes and crowns and cosmic rules like we're doing homework for the universe. But right now, you can put the notebook down. You don't have to track which timeline Farmworld belongs to, or whether this version of Simon has already met Betty yet. You can let the details blur at the edges, the way a painting softens when you step back across the room. We're going to treat your mind a little like Prismo's dreamer, that old man, floating in some quiet apartment in some forgotten corner of reality, doesn't know he is generating a wishmaster at the center of time. He is just sleeping, breathing in, breathing out. And yet, from that sleep, entire universes of desire and consequence spill out. You can do that too. You can rest now and let your own brain keep spinning out tiny timelines behind your closed eyes. Little dream Finns and dream Jakes running around in your personal ooh, stitched together from half-remembered episodes and random thoughts about your day. No pressure, no canon, just whatever your sleeping mind feels like airing on its private wall of screens. If you miss a piece of the story, it will still be here when you wake up. Prismo isn't offended. The timelines don't get lonely, they just keep gliding forward, like distant ships seen from a dark shoreline. In a moment, we'll do the quiet housekeeping, the small human rituals at the end of a video. But even while we do that, the screens in the time room are dimmed, humming softly in the dark, waiting for the next wish, the next dream, the next interruption. If you wake up later, a gentle invitation. So here we are in the dim afterglow of all those timelines, with the screens humming low and the time room almost pretending to sleep with you. The wishes have quieted down. The Lich is not asking for anything. Finn and Jake, somewhere on one of those distant panels, are just hanging out, and you are here at the center of time, listening to a stranger talk softly about a cosmic wishmaster. If you're still awake right now, actually tracking these words as they drift past, that's one timeline. In that reality, you've ridden the whole wave of this video, from ancient magic to Prismo's paradox, and you're just letting your mind idle in the dark. Think about that for a second. Out of all the universes, you picked this one, where your brain winds down to the gentle bureaucracy of wish rules and cosmic loneliness. But there's another possibility, another you. Maybe you dozed off an hour ago, somewhere back in the Mushroom War, or when Simon was quietly losing his mind under the crown. And you've just woken up now, a little disoriented, hearing this part like a transmission from a dream you barely remember. Here is the thing. Both versions of you are completely fine. There is no correct way to use a Prismo lore video. You can treat this as a story you follow beat by beat, mapping every timeline in your head. You can let it dissolve into background noise, a kind of soft multiverse static that makes your room feel less empty. You can come back to it every night until certain sentences become familiar landmarks in the dark. There are no grades, no secret test at the end, just you and time and the slow turning of imaginary universes. If at some point when you're awake and feel like interacting with the actual non-cartoon reality again, you want to tap like or subscribe, or leave a comment about where in the timeline you remember falling asleep, that would be quietly delightful. Not mandatory, not a wish with consequences. Just another tiny signal in the vast network of signals, like a little beacon saying, I was here, in the time room, for a while. We're going to keep exploring this format, if it feels good to you. Maybe we'll drift through other corners of OO as a bedtime ritual, following Marceline through the long centuries, or walking with Princess Bubblegum as she grows herself from candy biomass into a ruler. Maybe we'll slip into entirely different worlds, other universes with their own strange rules of power, desire, and existence. In that specifically Adventure Time way, the multiverse is big enough for a lot of quiet journeys. And in this video, in this particular night, you chose to spend a stretch of your finite human lifespan here, in the time room, with Prismo. And with me. That matters, not in a grand destiny-altering way, but in a small human way. Thank you for that. Thank you for letting this be your background radiation for a while. When you're ready, you can let the next section pull you forward, or you can let this be the last voice you hear before sleep. Either path is a good wish. Lights down in the time room, final fade to black. Either path is a good wish. Here is the thing. Whichever one you chose, we've reached the same place together. The screens along the walls of the time room are still humming, still holding every timeline, every version of OO, every Finn, and every Simon, and every quiet off-screen moment where nothing important happens except that someone keeps existing. But even a cosmic bachelor pad at the center of time has to wind down eventually. Prismo stretches, long and lazy, like a sunbeam pulling itself across the couch. His outline blurs for a second against the glow of the monitors, this two-dimensional wishmaster peeling himself off the surface of reality. One by one, he starts turning the channels off. Not with drama, with the absent-minded efficiency of someone closing tabs at the end of a very long day. The mushroom war flickers away first, its distant flashes of light shrinking to a single harmless pixel. The age of ice and memory folds into black, Simon's silhouette and Betty's promise slipping back into the quiet. The rise of Ooh, the candy kingdoms, the vampires, the weird wizards arguing about nothing, clicks into darkness like a row of tiny, satisfied switches. Finn and Jake's lifetime, all those adventures that gently nudged the universe toward balance, compresses down into one last soft frame of them, just hanging out. Think about that for a second. The multiverse, reduced to a cozy afterimage, we're going to let even that fade. Prismo lifts the remote, gives you a sideways look you can almost feel, and taps the final button. The wall of screens exhales into a low amber glow, then slides down into a deep, comforting dimness. Not a void, not oblivion, just the kind of darkness that understands you are tired and does not ask you for anything. If your eyes are still open, you can let them get heavy now. If they're already closed, you're ahead of the universe. Let's start one last shared breath, in through your nose, slow and quiet, like you're trying not to wake an old man dreaming a cosmic wishmaster into existence. Hold it for a moment at the center of time, then let it out gently as every timeline settles, not forever, but for now into a temporary peaceful stillness. You do not have to remember all of this. You do not have to hold the rules, or the law, or the exact order of events in your head. In this video, the story has been doing that work for you, and it will keep doing that whenever you want to come back, tomorrow, next week, in some far-off corner of your own timeline. Prismo will still be here on his couch, remote in hand, waiting to press play again. You are allowed to let go of everything you were carrying before this started. Every question, every desire, every stray thought about power and fate and whether your wishes were the right ones. You can set them down on the coffee table of the universe and walk away for a while. If you haven't already, close your eyes. Let your own dreams pick up where Ooze left off. Maybe in a candy kingdom, maybe in some quiet field after the last battle, maybe just on that couch in the time room, watching nothing in particular, no battles, no quests, just the low hum of existence being enough. The glow fades, the channels go to static, then to silence. The center of time pretends to sleep. Good night.